Hey everybody, welcome back to Keelah Talks. It's been a while since I did one of these. It feels like forever. How are we all doing? Before I start, there were a few super chats in. And Tattie, yes, I'm going to kill you. Just saying it right now. I'm just saying it right now. The first one was from Rob Parks. Thank you, Rob, for $5 US. A plane ticket fund. Plane ticket fund to travel to Texas and kick some ass. I'm not opposed to this. Just saying, not opposed to it. That might be a good idea. I have plenty of spaces to stay. I think I can hide in the plot hole's basement. I think for like a couple of weeks. I don't know. Um, Daddy for five British pounds. I'm sorry, Rob. I couldn't actually pull it up. And yeah, I know phrasing. Couldn't really pull it up onto the screen because it was done well in advance of the stream starting. So, Taddy for £5 says for Keelah to sing at the end. If I remember to do it, I will. Ish when everybody else has left. Under the bus. Take it from us. Life is no fuss. Under the bus. Yes, I know it doesn't sound the same when it's spoken, but yeah, this comes out of a discussion that I had with my members where they're now all on because basically with my members what I do is I throw them under the bus all the time because a lot of them are always here. They're always here. They're always inside chat, and I just basically slag the fuck out of them all the time. So Tusk gets paid tomorrow, so he can't say shit. It's great. But yeah, that's so yeah, I've started to refer to them as the under the bus crew, and there is a little emoji for the under the bus crew to use to identify themselves if they so wish. And Rob Parks is back. Yeah, you could say I threw you under the bus. Everyone is throwing me under the bus. That's okay. That's why we're the under the bus crew. We're cool. We're cool. So hello to everybody. Let me see who is in. And look, Rob Parks using the under the bus crew. Tatty as well. Thank you. I like my new emojis. I'm like one member away from getting another 9, and that freaks me the fuck out because then I actually have to think of another 9 emojis. So nobody do it. Don't do it. Just don't. Just no. Because the stress of that would probably kill me. Let me see who I have in the chat before we even start this thing. So Clive, yeah, I'll never stop censoring Clive, especially when it's self-censored. It's always fun. Voodoo Inquisitor, it's good to see you. Yeah, I will be talking about. Obviously, I will be. Wait, the Texas flag is their Yelp review. 1 star, would not recommend it. Nice. I like it. I do. I like it. I mean, being a bit harsh for the people that actually live in Texas. Yes, 5 a.m. Oh yeah, it's not 5 a.m. I'm usually doing it when it's 5 a.m. for you, haven't I, Mr. Andrat? Right. We have a lot to discuss. There's a lot to unpack in this madness that's been happening over in Texas. And it's not just Texas. I understand that it's not just Texas. It's like 14 different states, 5 of whom have already brought in similar quote unquote heartbeat laws. So we're going to be discussing what a heartbeat law is, and a little bit of context from where I'm coming from. So we'll be discussing the abortion debate in general, and we'll be discussing abortion in Ireland and how we went from one of the most restrictive laws in the world to having abortion legal up until 12 weeks. So it's gonna be a fun show. That's why I never catch your streams. I'm allergic to 5 a.m. The 5 a.m. streams I think is on the Sunday. That's the Life on the Flip Side, and that's mainly for people who are in from, well, Vietnam and around, and then Ireland and our little group. So I try to do different times to see what works. And 10 p.m. like this time slot kind of works for a lot of people. And then on Sunday, then it's just a random chat. There's no pressure on people to actually be there. It's good fun. So let's get into it. Oh, God help us all. If only God existed. Right. So in his opening to signing this bullshit bill that we will go into in detail, Greg Abbott, who is the current Texas governor, came out and said, "Our Creator endowed us with the right to life." So immediately, separation of church and state is not a thing. Now, I know that that's somewhat a given in the US, because trying to run for a political office in the US while you are not Christian, let's say, not Christian, can be a difficult thing. It can be a very, very challenging thing. So, first of all, by premising the bill that he is enacting with a creator, it's basically saying that we as lawmakers, and this is the problem that I have, and this is where I come from when it comes to the abortion debate. I don't care what you think. I don't care how you feel. That's on you. That is up to you to decide. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I'm not going to tell you you're right. But this right here is all kinds of fucked up. And the reason being is because, as a public servant, as someone who is elected to serve the public, the whole point of it is that you are supposed to not just reflect those who voted for you, but you are in service of the entire public. So that means the people who are religious, the people who are religious without being part of your religious sect, and the people who are non-religious. By prefacing this whole sideshow act, because that's all I can call it, as with our Creator endowed us with. First of all, can you prove it? Because if you can't use it. You shouldn't be allowed to use it, not in the service of the public. Okay, so it's also found in the Declaration. That's questionable. Yeah, that's. But the question is whether or not he should be allowed as a public representative when he's under official duties to serve the entire public, whether or not his creator, his individual creator, should come into his lawmaking. And this is the problem in general that I see with the abortion debate. I don't care how he feels in his own private life, but as Texas governor, his duty is not just to the people who believes as he does. His duty is to everybody he represents, everybody he has a duty to protect. And by initiating the conversation by saying, already I have a bias, it's not helpful to the situation. This is true. Thank you, Maya. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator, important word, with certain unalienable rights. Yeah, agreed. So it's there, but right now, in 2021, the question over it should public representatives be allowed to bring their own private religious beliefs into their lawmaking? They have every right to hold those beliefs, but should they be bringing it into their it's pandering. It's actually worse than pandering, Mr. Andrat. It's basically saying, I have a bias. I'm going to fight for that bias, and I don't care who's left behind. And as a governor, it is my feeling that you have to separate your private self a little bit. Now, campaigning is one thing, but when you're elected, you're serving and this is the problem with all elected representatives that I see. It's not just unique to the US. We see it all over the place. Don't we have 3 staunchly Catholic Supreme Court justices? Hi, Amanda. Yes, you do. Having said that, their Catholic, staunchly Catholic bullshit should not be coming in the way of doing their duty, which is to uphold the US Constitution. And that's replicated across the world. That's not just I'm not just saying that for the purposes of the US. That's just my feeling in it of it in general. Yeah, Chris. Unfortunately, and hello to Christopher Shapley. Abbott isn't serving his constituents. He's supporting the views of his financial backers. I mean, that's part of the US problem, that they don't really limit, or they haven't got a real handle. Not that we do either. Yes, Slicer John, this is the point that I'm making. It's funny how they use the exact same excuse as the Taliban, and they call the Taliban evil. They're just members of the wrong religion. So that the point here is, he prefaced signing this bill by saying our creator endowed us with the right to life. And yet we allow millions of children. So first of all, he is appealing to a greater authority. He's saying our creator gave us this. And then he's equating fetuses with children. This is the second problem. Fetuses are potential children. They are not children yet. There is a reason why the term fetus exists. We will get into that. We will definitely get into that later. Yes, people with the surname Abbott are generally bad politicians. That's a bit harsh. But you make a really good point. Yeah. So the whole, exactly, Titan. These are the same people. In Texas. We work to save those lives, and yet there is not a mask mandate, and yet there is no mandate to actually get vaccinated. In fact, they are doing everything they can to stand in the way of the vaccination program. So and this goes to the heart of the hypocrisy that I'm going to talk about. And we have it here in Ireland. We've had 35 years of it and more. Horrible thing to say, but a fetus is a form of parasite on the host. It is, unfortunately. And we'll actually get to that in a little while, because there was a US politician. And it was summed up beautifully by Russell Howard, who is a UK comedian. And he clipped this of a US politician calling a woman a host. So, yeah, kind of let the veil slip there. But yeah, let's get into it, and let's talk about it. So, what does the abortion law contain? So, first of all, the abortion law, the new heartbeat law. So, first of all, heartbeat laws are the idea of banning abortion when a heartbeat is detectable. Now, the problem with that is that it's a bit of a misnomer. It's so what they try. Sorry, I'm just getting my notes. Yeah, there we go. Yes, I have notes, because otherwise I'll just be dragged down by the chat. And I mean, so much is going on in the chat, and I absolutely fucking love it. Right. So the fetal heartbeat is a very, very deceptive term. It's basically the first the first cellular pulsing. It's not actually a fully formed muscle yet. It's just the pulsating, the initial pulsating towards what would become the heart. But it's not a heart yet. And this is part of the problem. These folks are science deniers. And it's important when we discuss this to understand that this is, in the legal terms and in the political realm, these guys do not want to protect lives. And we see that all the time. It's not their intention. The abortion lobbies, it's not their intention. Now, some of the people that might back them up, they might have good intentions, but these folks do not have good intentions. It is about control. And again, we'll get into that now in a little while. So the law states that when a heartbeat is present, so basically in and around the 6-week mark, and again, heartbeat in quotations, then no abortion is legal. And it's important to play around with this word legal. There's no exceptions for rape and incest. I'll come back in on that later because I do have personal experience with this bullshit. Except there is a minor exception for a medical emergency, but they haven't qualified what is a medical emergency. Oh yeah. I'll be talking about the I'll be talking about repeal. I'll definitely be talking about repeal, Phoebe, for sure, for fucking sure. The next point is doctors can be sued if they perform or intend to perform the procedure. So now it's thought crime. So if you assess a woman longer than 6 weeks, who is longer than 6 weeks pregnant, and you assess them for abortion, you can be charged. And that's very concerning. Public officials are, in the initial phases, prohibited from enforcing a rule. So, for instance, it's not going to be up to the police, which was something that I was talking about last night on the ACA servers. When it comes to public officials, so they can't bring court cases against individuals. But private citizens can sue for a minimum, if they win, a minimum of $10,000. And I mean a minimum. That's what's scary. So automatically, you're turning people against each other. Now, what's even more alarming is that the private citizen does not have to have a connection to the patient and does not need to be a resident in Texas. So anywhere in the US can go, any person, not entity, like thankfully, no entities can sue other entities, but people are able to sue abortion providers from anywhere in the US. It's not restricted to Texas, and that's why it's so. It is a bounty. It's basically a bounty on the heads of people. It's not even science and medicine, Chris. It's even worse than that. It's a bounty on the support structures for women. And I am going to talk about that because this is a very, very important point. When you, and I'll talk about it from my own perspective, from personal experience, what it does to people when you rip away the people that, the support networks of people that care about these women and these non-binary and early developing trans men. Because I know one of my best friends is trans. And when he was going through in the early stages of transitioning into a man, he got pregnant. And he was going to Britain for an abortion and he was stopped. He was held up for about 5 hours, asking him where he was going. Why does his passport say female? Etc. etc. Like it's so disgusting. It's so disgusting. I will talk about it in a bit of detail because people need to understand what these laws actually do. in practice. It's bad enough saying, oh, well, I have a theory of what I might do. I have the experience. For my entire life up until 2018, I lived the abortion ban. I lived it. And so the best thing that I feel I can do is, one, tell you what it's like, and two, tell you how to fight it. And if all I can do is that and give you my support, then it's worth it. The other thing that really upsets me about this law is that clinics that are sued unjustly, so if it's found against the person who is trying to take this frivolous lawsuit, the clinics cannot recover their legal fees. And yet, if they are found in breach of the law, they have to pay everybody's legal fees. Everyone's. That's scary. So yeah, I wanted to explain exactly what was in the law, because a lot of people they haven't really been paying attention to what the law actually states. And just so you have it, this is a copy of the law, of the bill. 23 pages long. Go through it, have a look at it, see what you think. And see if you are as disturbed about it as I do. One of the things that I noticed when I was reading this, actually, was the idea that if someone, doesn't matter who it is, it could be, so if you give money to a woman who has an abortion, whether she uses your money or not, you can still be found liable. But what was really disturbing was, if you are charged and you're brought before the court and you rat someone out and say, well, I've done this to prevent them from getting an abortion, and then you're off the hook. So you actually have to plead to the courts, and the onus is on you to prove that you're innocent, that you haven't helped someone obtain an abortion. Not on the person who is bringing the case against you to prove that you have done it. You have to prove that you haven't done it. Now, they try to say it's a good thing. We've put in this little provision, this great little provision that states that you can't be charged for the same action, for the same abortion or helping, or for the same incident, let's say, incident. You can't be held liable for the same incident twice. Still doesn't make it great. In my view, still leaves a lot to be desired. It's scary, guys. It's scary. So I just want to run through really quickly, a little bit of historical fact when it comes to abortion. Because a lot of people don't understand these. Yeah, they're even allowed to sue Uber and Lyft drivers for people getting abortions. And it doesn't matter what role you played. I'm going to come back in on this because we had the same threat. So I do want to explain how we fought back in the little ways that we did. So a little bit of historical abortion fact for you guys. So abortion didn't come into law until the mid to late 1800s. So before that, it was common law. And the law around abortion was centered around, it wasn't really law, but the understanding around abortion was it was okay before the quickening. So anyone that doesn't know what the quickening is, that is when when there is deliberate and separate consciousness from that of the mother. Usually when the baby kicks for the first time. So that was the quickening. And yeah, we're going back before 1860s. I'm just going to go back to this because, yeah, what the fuck, Texas? What the fuck? For anyone that doesn't understand what WTF was, I saw Tatty trying to guess what it was in my Discord. But yeah, so the quickening was, and this was held up by a lot of churches too. They would respect the quickening, but they didn't call it the quickening in churches. I'm ex-Catholic, so I can mainly speak from a Catholic background. And a lot of the church thinkers who are now considered saints, some of them are considered saints, a lot of them believed in ensoulment. So again, ensoulment was when God would give you your soul, and that was, and then you would show deliberate and separate consciousness to that of your mother. That's when you were a person. That's when personhood began. Yeah, the quickening sounds like a horror, but yeah, the quickening was a real thing. If you go back in common law in the UK and throughout Europe, the quickening was considered when you basically became a person, or when you became viable. And many of the lawmakers at the time, or many of the doctors even, did believe that the quickening, usually at about 20 to 24 weeks, and that was the cut-off point. And for years, that's what became the law in Britain. So in 1861, you had the Offences Against the Person Act, and that was the first time it was actually written into law. What would happen if you if you purposely had an abortion when it was illegal? So that's an important point. The 1800s was an important time of change, because from the 1760s right through to the 1840s, you had the Industrial Revolution. And why is this important? I'm a sociologist, so this is where my training comes into effect. The Industrial Revolution is a system, and capitalism as a system relies on profit. They rely on the next generation of workers being produced for as cheap as possible. And so what was happening in and around the 1820s to the 1840s and the 1850s was religious orders were questioning who to back in this big war. Was it going to be the petty bourgeoisie? Was it going to be these emerging capitalist centers? Or was it going to be the oligarchs and kings and queens of old Europe? And it was quickly becoming evident that the kings and queens were not going to be able to protect the churches if they fell. And so the churches started to hedge their bets, and they start playing off the oligarchs against the capitalists and the capitalists against the oligarchs, and saying, we will support you, we will give you funding, because let's face it, they were the biggest landowners at the time. And so a lot of religious orders, that is partly how they got their land, is during the decline of the oligarchs and the incline of capitalism, because they had wealth. They had wealth that capitalists didn't have. And so when a religious order came behind you, that was helpful for you, for your movement in trying to actually gain ground. So what happened was the religious orders had to adapt to the new dominant force that were running society, which led to Pope Pius in 1869. I think it was the 9th, Pope Pius the 9th. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But Pope Pius brought out the Apostolicae Sedius. I can never pronounce it. But basically, it was to state that excommunication would come into force for women who had had abortion, for homosexual relationships, and I can't remember the other one. There was a lot of really draconian things that were set, and it was seen, because it was coming from a pope, it was seen as, this is a message coming from God, and we couldn't nobody could refuse it, nobody could argue against it. And so for Catholics anyway, they didn't have a set agreement on abortion, because before this, the understanding in the Catholic Church was Pope Gregory XIV's 1591 declaration that basically up to, I think it was 166 days. Yeah. What? Are you sure, Rob? Are you sure? It was a Pope Pius, and it was 1869. I've read it. Well, I've read the translation. I'm sorry, I've read the translation. Um, and so that's why a lot of Catholics believe that it's canon law, but it's not canon law because it was brought in by Pius. So it's not actually canon. Papal law is a little bit different to canon law. Yeah, I just wanted to make, yeah, too many popes, too many popes. But I just wanted to give an understanding of where and why we started to see that movement towards banning abortion. It's because, and the nuclear family, yeah, the nuclear family came in and around then. Before then, you had communities raising children, really. And the only time that you would see the mother, father, and children was the aristocracy because of inheritance rights. Beyond that, nobody gave a fuck. Nobody cared who was doing what to who, and who was raising the children. It was a communal effort, for the most part. Not to say that they didn't live as family blocks, but the idea of putting it into law and putting it into a framework didn't come until the 1860s. So just so for any religious people that might be in the chat that's lurking and don't want to speak, I understand, but that's the religious basis of attitudes towards abortion. A lot of churches around that time, it would have been seen up until the quickening, up until the point of ensoulment. And I do feel that I have to make that point because, you're up against religious people who do, some of them genuinely do believe that they're doing the right thing. And for anyone that is in the US, that is in the Bible Belt, what I would do is I would advise you to get onto Catholics for Choice because they have a lot of work, not just for Catholics, but for many different religious branches. So get in touch with them because they have brilliant pamphlets, of which I have like 3 boxes of each. Voodoo Inquisitor for $10, yeah, says, speaking of communal efforts, keep up the good videos. Thank you so much. I will try. And hello to Math Pig. I see you there. So, right, let's talk about Ireland. I'm going to give you a brief timeline. And when I say brief timeline, it's not brief. It's not fucking brief. I'm sorry. So we're going to talk about Ireland. We're going to talk about my experience and my involvement in Repeal the Eighth and why it was so successful and what people can learn from it. And I hope there are things that we did that you guys that are suffering from these absolutely draconian measures that are being brought in by multiple states. If you are in one of those states, I hope, first of all, it will show you nothing is forever. If I can say anything, nothing is forever. And what's that old saying? This too shall pass. I like that, Phoebe. Really like that. Sorry. Repeal the Eighth. Repeal it now. Repeal it forever. Yes. We'll talk about that because there are updates about repeal. Because we have our review coming up this year. So 1861, as I said, Offence Against the Persons Act. We were part of Britain at the time. That didn't last, obviously. But we did carry that on our statute books up until 1983. Now, the Offences Against the Person Act, anyone obscuring an abortion would basically be subject to up to life in prison. That's what we were threatened with under law. Now, in 1971, we gained access to contraception. And even that was under limited supply. So we had the contraceptives train. Basically, women went up the north because the law at that time stated that no woman could have contraceptives unless the priest, not the chemist, not the doctor, but the priest, agreed to give contraceptives. So what happened was in 1960, obviously the women's movement in the 1960s kind of hit us a little bit later. So in the 1970s, there was a big struggle for women's rights, and one of those things was contraceptives. And then what happened was we were allowed contraceptives if our husbands agreed. Yeah, I'm going to let that one sink in. We had to ask our husbands. And if we didn't have husbands, our fathers, our dads had to approve of us getting contraceptives. Um, Now, that changed obviously because the more and more we needed women in work, the less. Yeah, what the fuck? Hello, plot hole. We're talking about your state. I'm sorry. God love you. And I say God in the loosest possible terms. Yeah, so we had the contraceptive train. In 1983, then we had the Eighth Amendment. And the Eighth Amendment basically stated that the unborn had, and it didn't, unlike in this bill, weirdly enough, they actually define what the unborn is. Let me see. The text of the Eighth Amendment stated the state acknowledges the right to life of the unborn and, with due regard to the equal right to life of the mother, guarantees in its laws to respect and, as far as practicable, by its laws to defend and vindicate the right of the unborn. So basically, it was given, a fetus was given equal rights to the mother. And what ended up happening was the fetus was given more rights than the woman, because the whole point of the phrasing was guarantees in its law to respect and defend and vindicate that right. So they were going, that was not just a passive thing. That meant that you had to back it up, that you had to fight to defend those rights. Who were you fighting against? The women, pretty much. But they never defined the unborn, and weirdly enough, Texas does. Texas defines the unborn as an unborn human child. Interesting. Interesting phrasing. So, again, I will put this in the chat for anyone who hasn't actually read. For anyone who hasn't read the text, this is the bill here. Yikes. Johnny, like, with respect, I'm terrified for your daughters. Like, yikes. And I don't mean that to sound condescending, but fucking hell, I've lived this, man. I've lived it. I know the stress that you guys are under now. Yes. Then yeah, I'm getting to that. So in 1983, the Eighth Amendment comes in. A couple of months later, there's a woman called Keelah Hodgers. Keelah Hodgers had cancer. She had a reoccurring cancer, and because there was so much discrepancy over the Eighth Amendment, the doctors were afraid to actually give her an abortion because they didn't know what law was actually going to come in conflict with it. They left her. And what's worse is they stopped giving her cancer treatment because she was pregnant. Without understanding all of the connotations when you bring medical things into the medical realm into the legal realm, this is the kind of thing that comes out of it. So Keelah Hodgers died 2 days after giving birth to her daughter, who also died a few hours after birth because the cancer spread to the fetus. You know, she wasn't able to get cancer treatment because she was pregnant. She wasn't able to end the pregnancy because of the law, and both end up dying. The very next year, there was the case of Anne Lovett. If you don't know who Anne Lovett is, I would absolutely recommend checking it out, because Anne Lovett was a 15-year-old who fell pregnant. We don't know how, but she fell pregnant. And she was found in a grotto under the statue of the Virgin Mary next to her dead son. She had given birth. Went full term. Never told anyone she was pregnant, so they say. There were people, I've spoken to people in that town. I went to university with someone who lived in that town. People fucking knew. And they left her. And she went out of her home early one morning, went to the grotto, prayed that it would end, went into labor, gave birth there on the fucking grotto, and died. So again, when you say pro-life, is this what you're talking about? So for us then, the next big thing was 1990 marital rape was recognized. Yeah, it wasn't until 1990 that marital rape was actually recognized as a thing in Ireland. Before then, women were basically still seen as property of their husbands. 2 years later, this, when I was growing up, this just broke my heart. The X case. 1992, the X case. 13-year-old girl was raped. The parents phoned up the attorney, they phoned up the local guards and asked if they could use the fetal tissue from the abortion to prove that this man raped their daughter. The Attorney General turned around and got a High Court injunction to seize their passports. Again, pro-life? You know? Now, it was later overturned in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decided, because the reason why it was overturned in the Supreme Court, again, is important, she became suicidal. She went on hunger strike and became actively suicidal. So, oh geez. Yeah, we're still having those arguments, Amanda. People who are saying marital rape doesn't exist. That when you enter into a union like that, therefore your partner's property. Bullshit. Fucking bullshit. I would absolutely agree with you there. It's bullshit. So the X case set a precedent. And less than 6 months later, they were trying to remove the suicide clause. So the idea was, the Supreme Court said a woman can have the right to an abortion if her life is in serious and immediate danger. And that serious and immediate risk to life is important. Because, and we'll see it later, because what happened is, as doctors came out years later, there is no clear way, there's no clear dividing line between health and life. There's no clear dividing line. And this is part of the problem. That when you see things in a black and white issue, like people do with abortion, then you don't see the grey. And that's where lives are lost, where they actually could be saved. So we had an attempt to remove the suicide clause. That fucking failed, which is awesome. And then we had the 13th Amendment that basically, to specify, as Phoebe actually brought up, the 13th Amendment in the same year, I think it was actually 1994, as far as I can remember. But pretty much in and around that time, you had the 13th Amendment to specify that prohibition of abortion would not limit the freedom to travel in and out of the state. Now, we're going to get into that in a little while, because that's an important one. And that's one of the ways we were actually able to overturn the 8th Amendment. So, yeah, we'll get into that in a bit. Yes. So the next one was 1997. We had the C case, which was another 13-year-old rape victim who, again, went on hunger strike and was again ignored, because what happened after the 1992 case was, although it was precedent in Supreme Court, no laws were ever actually enacted on the basis of Supreme Court ruling. Over the course of the next 10 years, approximately 7 died as a result of just not enacting X. Now, there could be more, but there's 7 cases that we know of. 2002, after the C case, there was another attempt to remove suicide from the Supreme Court ruling. Even though they hadn't enacted any laws. The ABC cases then went in 2005 to the UN Court of Human Rights, and A and B lost, and C won. C was a woman who basically, under the law that we had, did have the right to have an abortion in Ireland, but wasn't given the information. And one of the things with the right to travel, it also included the right to information. But the issue with it was that only particular bodies could give out information on how to access abortion. So that was a big problem. And then here's where we get personal. Because 2012 was a huge turning point for abortion rights in Ireland. 2012 was the death of Savita Halappanavar, and Savita was 31 years old. She was a dentist from India. She came to this country for a life, to build her life. She chose our country to build her life, and we ended hers. And what happened was she went into a hospital in Galway, suffering from a miscarriage. And instead of one of the things that happened was her and her husband on 3 separate occasions requested an abortion to hurry along, because now she was dilated. And as any woman will tell you, as any non-binary will tell you, being induced is not a good thing. Being dilated is not a good thing, because basically your cervix is open. And the problem with it is, as the longer you're open, the more likely you are to get an infection, like, sepsis. So what happened was, over a series of hours, she was refused an abortion on 3 occasions. This is what we know. And Praveen Halappanavar, her husband, came out very, very strongly and very publicly about what happened. They were told before she went unconscious that she couldn't have an abortion because Ireland was a Catholic country. You have no idea how much that one sentence broke the hearts of every young person in this country. Because nobody knew who X was. X opened the idea that abortion could be anyone. X was for anonymous. It could be your daughter. It could be your sister. It could be your friend. It could be your workmate. It could be your mother. It could be anyone. Anyone that you have known in your life. X was for anonymous. But you didn't have to look X in the eye. And what Savita did was, all of a sudden, this beautiful, young, vibrant, smiling woman was on the front page of every newspaper, and you had to look in her face and tell her she deserved it. And most of the country couldn't do it. And that is what, X could have been anyone, and it opened up the grey. But here was this woman right in front of you. You couldn't get away from her face. She was on every news channel. She was everywhere. India, what we consider a third world country, has abortion rights. And we look down on them for being third world. And here we are, more restrictive and more draconian than India. That's when you know you fucked up. And there was such a shock that fell over this country. I can't even explain it. People were mourning. I've not seen anything like it in my life. I was there at the vigils, where people were traveling to Galway, and at one stage there was, I think, 2,000 people standing in the square in Galway. There was 5,000 standing outside Dáil Éireann, which is our parliament. It was huge, and people genuinely were mourning. They were devastated. Never saw anything like it in my life. Perhaps I'll never see anything like it again. I hope I don't, because it was gutting. Now, at the same time, about a week before Savita broke, I found out I was pregnant after being raped. And so I had been in denial. I hadn't told anyone that I had been raped. And so when I found out I was pregnant, it was, well, I haven't told anyone I was raped. How am I going to explain that I'm pregnant and that I don't want it? Especially in Ireland. Especially in Ireland. Now, my mum is amazing and she would have supported me, and she does support me. But at the same time, everything that was going through my head at the time, it was not good. So I didn't say, I kept my mouth shut. And in a way, I went into protective mode by pretending it didn't exist. When I found out I was pregnant, my whole world fell apart. Couldn't leave the house. Couldn't leave the house at all. And then I turned on the TV, and there's Savita staring me in the face. And I was thinking, what the fuck am I doing? You know, I have the information, I have the right passport, and I have a job. You know, the three things that spelled salvation in a way for Irish women at the time. If you could travel, if you had the means to do it, and if you knew how to book an abortion, because I'd booked abortions for other people, so I knew where to go, who to trust, in a sense. I booked my abortion. I had my abortion in November of 2012. And for anyone that doesn't know what it's like, this is where Texas comes in. This is where Texas has to learn. Because what happened was, yes, I was working, but I was basically on minimum wage, so I couldn't afford a hotel. I was in a 16-bed hostel. It's a fact, you know. Bye, plot hole. Good to have you here. So I was in a 16-bed dorm when I had my abortion. I went to the clinic. That was fine. Never been so calm in my life. It was fine. Came out, had a really bad turn, and got into a taxi. And the taxi driver said, "Oh, I know where you've been. Would you not come over midweek when all the Paddy girls come over?" Nothing like a little bit of light racism to help you through your day. But I was so exhausted at that point that I got home. And I was sitting in the dorm, ended up falling asleep, and the painkillers wore off at about 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, so what happens during an abortion is you're given pills. I had to have a different procedure because I was so far gone, because I had to delay things so long. So I had to have suction. And they gave me the abortion pills to make sure that everything was out of my uterus, which is fine. Now I was told that there would be cramping, and I was given very strong painkillers to mitigate that. Being told the cramping is bad is nothing compared to living it. It was so bad that I actually couldn't get down the end of the bed to my bag where the painkillers were. That's how bad it got. And so for about 3 hours, I was trying to reach my bag. I was vomiting because of the pain. I was bleeding heavily from the abortion, from the pills. It was fucking hell. And what's worse, I was in a fucking 16-bed dorm. Didn't have my medical team. And again, remember, I have bipolar as well. So I'm on my own. I didn't even have my cat. That, do you know what? Sitting in that fucking dorm room, all I wanted was my cat. All I wanted was Casper. That's all I wanted. And I couldn't have any of it. Couldn't have my mom there. Couldn't have my sister for support. Uh, couldn't have my own cup of tea with my own mug, my own bed. Couldn't have any of it. And what's worse, when I did manage to reach the pills, and I got and about took about 40 minutes for them to kick in. I got to the I had to fucking throw everything away. It was embarrassing, lads. It was fucking embarrassing. The whole bed was destroyed. I opened every window, threw out the bed sheets. Everything went into the bin. I managed to get into the bathroom, and I mean, I'm white. Like I'm not even going to explain how white I am. Like I'm extremely white. I'm stereotypical Irish white. But what I saw when I looked in that mirror, there was no life left. There's no life in me. There was no color in my cheeks. There was nothing. And I had to look myself in the eye and say, I'm not making a home. And genuinely, that's how I felt. And I know now, looking back on it, and in my mind, I was like, this is just panic. This is just panic. I'm in shock. And so it took a while, but about 5 o'clock in the morning, I said, right, I'm determined. I have a flight at 6 o'clock in the morning, or 8 o'clock. It was pushed back to 8. Thank you, Ryanair. So I now have a flight at 8 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock. I slammed the money down on the table and fucking ran out the door and said, I'll see how far I can get. I got to the bus, and your man took one look at me. The driver took one fucking look at me and said, for fuck's sake, go down the back of the bus and sleep. I'll call you when we're there. He knew exactly what I was there for. Like the taxi man. Only, less racist. And he did. As soon as we got there, he came down the end of the bus with a bottle of water, fresh bottle of water. He says, here you go. He says, take that with you. He says, take it slow. Just take it slow. I see this every day. How devastating he must have been. Because all I could see in his head was another one. He's seen it every fucking day. And this is what Texas women are going to face. This is the reality, guys. Blanket bans do not work. This is the reality. You are forcing women to leave their comfort zone, leave the people, and this is what this bill is supposed to do. Make no bones about it. It rips you away. Yes, hey Texas, this is your fucking future. Not even your story, this is your future. It rips people away from their support networks. And when you're a vulnerable person, when you have, as I said, like I have bipolar, when you have a physical disability, it gets even worse trying to access these services, especially if you're poor. And we have a saying in Ireland, or we had a saying in Ireland, I should say, rich women have abortions, poor women have babies. That was just how it was. Sadly, the turtle moves, there are women on the legislature, and they were in favor of this bullshit because it's not going to affect them. They have fucking money. Hate to say it, they have money. So when I got back, there were still vigils going on for Savita. Like it was I was still in the whole center of this media storm. And what was incredible was to see the amount of women and men and non-binary and all of the people coming out in support of abortion rights. And without knowing it, they were supporting me. They were supporting women like me. And that was incredible. That feeling was incredible. From there, and here's where again I want to give a little bit of support to people in Texas. As I suggested it, now I know Texas is fucking huge. But one of the things you have to start doing, and this is not restricted to Texas. So every year we have the March for Choice. And in and around the March for Choice, we have a day or 2 days where we put on events. One of the central focal points of those events is to speak out. This is a safe space for anyone who has had or helped a loved one get an abortion. This is where you tell your story. And what happens is, first of all, we create people who are able to tell their story without getting, like, yes, I get emotional when I'm talking about it, but I can talk about it. And I wouldn't be able to do that if not for the support that I got from these speakouts. It is like a support group. It is a support network, not just a support group, because it goes all over the country. And so one of the things that I would like to advise Texas to do is start up these speakouts. Get women, get men who are willing to tell their stories. And the more time goes on, the more you will find people willing to speak. What I found was, and again, this is not just unique to the US, is when I went to France to do a documentary for a French grad, women in France were saying, well, yeah, it's a basic human right here for the last 50 years, but we still don't talk about it. It's still kind of taboo. We don't really discuss it amongst ourselves. And that was, I don't know, that didn't sit well with me. Because in order to eliminate the stigma, you need to have these conversations. Just really quickly, thank you, Voodoo Inquisitor, for $10. Says, I can't imagine how hard it was to live, but thank you for telling your story. We need more strong people like you to help guide this world. And this is one of the reasons why I'm speaking now. I don't usually make this channel about my own experiences, unless it's, intellectual. But with this, it's important. Because only by telling your story, first of all, no one can corrupt your own experience. No one can speak for you. And one of the things that was happening in Ireland was it was trumped out this idea that, rape survivors, rape victims, incest, and the hard cases. And we can't legislate just for hard cases. I would agree with that. And I'll explain why now in a minute. But it was being used by anti-choicers to justify the cruelty that I had to go through. And I was tired of it. I was sick and tired of other people using my story without ever having lived it, without ever having tried to understand it. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to tell my story. Nobody else can tell it for me. The power that it gives you back, especially as a rape survivor, being able to tell your story, being able to live your truth, is huge. It was a huge boost for me. So thank you so much. I will continue to tell it. Like, probably not on this channel unless it's relevant, but it is important to actually discuss the realities of it. Keep fighting the good fight. Thank you, Sophie. Wait, sorry, Sophie. Sofa King Sleepy for $2. Thank you so much. But yeah, I was trying to decide whether or not I would make this discussion personal. The more I thought about it, the more I couldn't divorce my own personal experience because it's valuable. I can't pretend that it's not valuable because there's lessons there. There's understanding in hearing it firsthand. This is what I had to go through. Second best Bob for $5 with a love heart emoji face. Thank you. I love you too. That is awesome. And I love that image. That is awesome. Did you draw that or did someone else draw that? I want to know. But anyway, right, let's get back to the timeline. So this is what I was going through as this was all progressing. So in 2013, we had the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act, which basically was to legislate for X. And again, it didn't include anything for rape, incest, or fatal fetal abnormality. And at that time, there was a case or there was a group being set up. We already had Doctors for Choice, we had Rape Survivors for Choice, we had Midwives for Choice starting up, and we had what was the other group? There was a group for fatal fetal abnormalities. And so a lot of them, again, the speak outs helped. The speak outs were vital. Chris Shapley says for $5 says, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's greatly appreciated. Well, it helps you understand where I'm coming from when I'm talking about the issue of abortion. Because I can't separate my experience. I really can't. Anti-choice. Yeah, I don't call them pro-life. I call them anti-choice, Mr. Andrat, because first of all, it basically insinuates that I'm against life. And in my life, I've been a political activist. I've been a community activist. I have done more to protect life than any one of these anti-choicers who stand on the street screaming, abortion is murder. I'm sorry. I have. Tattie-bogle for £2 says tartan tinted hugs for you. Thank you. But we're not done by any stretch of the imagination, unfortunately, because what happened after 2013? So now we have the X case ruling. So we have abortion is legal if a woman's life is in immediate risk, including in cases of suicide. Enter onto the scene the very next year, Miss Y. Miss Y was a 19-year-old woman who came into the country. She was an asylum seeker. Asylum seekers have to go through a health check when they come into the country. And on entry to the country, during the health check, they figured out that she was pregnant, having been raped in her home country. So again, we have yet another rape survivor coming into the country saying, I am not carrying my rapist's baby. I don't give a flying fuck what you think. And unfortunately for her, she didn't have the correct passport. So she couldn't just run off to the UK like I could. She was stuck in an internment camp, basically, of where we actually throw our asylum seekers and migrants. And she had been lied to, she had been misled, she had tried to get special permissions to go to the UK, and a lot of stuff happened. And so by the time they'd sorted anything out, it was near viability. And so now the Attorney General is deciding whether or not to let this woman go to Britain. And the Attorney General said no, because it's viable. And the woman went on hunger strike. And so instead of understanding and showing compassion, something that the Irish system at that point didn't understand, words they just don't basically get, instead of giving her an abortion and understanding that maybe she didn't want to give birth to her rapist child, no, they instead strapped her to a bed and force-fed her until the baby was fully viable, and then they gave her a forced cesarean. Ireland, 2014. I'll give you a minute and let that sink in. And again, young people came out en masse to say this is not the country we want. 2016 was an interesting year because we had a general election, and at that point, yeah, it's gonna go for years again. At that point in 2016, the Fine Gael government that were elected in, how the fuck they were elected in, I've no idea. But at that point, they were saying abortion is not on the agenda. Now, it's in and around that point that I actually went onto the national broadcasters and told my story live on air. And because one of the things that they were trying to put into the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act was this idea of conscientious objection. And what conscientious objection meant was that it would be legal for an abortion, for a legal abortion, you could refuse to give a legal abortion if it was against your personal beliefs. Basically, you matter, your morals are more important than your patients. Now, I'll continue my thought now in a second. Mr. E-Man for 5 Aussie dollars. Thank you. A green heart and some tree trees. You gotta love the tree trees. But yeah, it's completely barbaric, cited John. And this is the point of having a one size fits all. Blanket bans do not work. And here is why. Learn from our mistakes, please. Learn. Yeah. So 2016, they refused. They were saying, it's not on the cards. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to discuss it. And Insidious Vids, good to see it. No problem. So that was 20. Oh, when was it? No, it was 2014 that they were saying, if we get into government, we're not going to talk about abortion. So that was 2 years before. This is when Miss Y happened. And so the next 2 years, what we did was, well, okay, they're not going to put it on the agenda for the government because not enough people are coming to them, talking to them in their offices, phoning up. And this is a thing, guys. This is a fucking thing. As soon as our politicians thought that their seats were gone, that's when they spoke up. That's when it went from number 17 on the talking point list in elections to the second most talked about thing. Like, first of all, 20 years ago, we couldn't even say the word abortion. If you were pro-choice, it was you either used the words choice or you used the word termination. You didn't use the word abortion. Abortion was social suicide to use. You always used the term choice or termination. One of the things that we did when Savita passed away was we decided as a group with the abortion rights campaign, we decided the only way to actually destigmatize abortion is to destigmatize the word. We have to fucking say it. And I remember discussion very well because what we were saying was, as long as abortion is in the name of the group, then that's a good thing because then, and what we found as well is that when we did do press releases and shit, they try to abbreviate to ARC, ARC, the abortion rights campaign. And now we were like, no, we want the full fucking name printed. You don't get to abbreviate our name. And so they were actually forced to print the entire name, which was awesome. Yeah. So 2016, we had the run up to the election, 2015, 2016, and we were making abortion rights one of the most talked about things on the doorsteps and in clinics. We actually had a fact sheet for people to go in to their clinics and talk to their TDs. And we organized little raids of the clinics where we had about, 7 people per night? Yeah, sounds Bible-y. I think that's why they used it. And that's why we demanded that they actually stopped abbreviating. Or if they were going to abbreviate, put the name in the full name in somewhere in the article or whatever. So they actually had to start using our proper name. But what would happen was we would organize raids and we'd go into the clinics because in Ireland, I can't speak for anywhere else, but in Ireland, every public representative is required to do somewhat of public consultation. So they have clinics and you can book a time slot. And we were booking time slots, but we were booking time slots that they wouldn't lap over each other. It wasn't one after the other. It was one, and then you'd have like two or three non ordinary people, and then you had another one, and then you had, so we were actually spacing it out. So all of a sudden, in all of these clinics, suddenly abortion was being talked about. Yeah, slop block. I like it. Slop block. But as soon as it started coming up on the doorsteps, and as soon as they got genuine emails, that's when they start questioning it. And in and around this time as well, you had two cases going to the UN Court of Human Rights. You had Amanda Mellett and Siobhan Whelan, who both waived their anonymity for the discussion to be had. Both had fatal fetal abnormalities and were forced to travel under great stress, under absolutely enormous stress, and they won their cases. But you also had the In Her Shoes initiative, where women, again, their stories were being printed. And we had a little booklet. I still have the booklet somewhere. We had a little booklet of women's stories of having an abortion, which is great. And we would just hand them out, you know? In Her Shoes is still up. And we also had a woman live streaming her abortion at one point as well. We didn't plan this, by the way. Just a woman went onto Twitter and started tweeting about her having an abortion. Like she was tweeting at the airport now, just got to the hotel, going in to see for the consultation, and it was done so beautifully and so respectfully, and a lot of us just had flashbacks. It was like being there again. It was incredible. It was incredible. The outpouring of support. And then, of course, in 2018, end of story. Well, it's not end of story because there's still a lot to tell. So in 2016, we had the Citizens Assembly start up. And the Citizens Assembly, it felt to us as though it was kicking the can down the road, basically. Now, if anyone wants to go and look at the Citizens Assembly, here is the link, because all of those sessions, every single one of them, the amazing conversation that was had, 2016 to 2018, it's all there. It's all there. And what came out of it shocked everyone. We thought it was just a kick the can down the road kind of exercise, but they actually came back and stated that their opinion was, after listening to all of us speak, after being in workshops with us, after talking to both sides and listening to the science and listening to the religious nuts and getting the full scope, they actually came back in favor of, first of all, repeal, to set this was legally binding. The decision to decide to have a referendum, that was kind of legally binding. The other findings weren't, but it was basically the commission was set up, or the assembly was set up to decide whether or not to have a vote. And then it switched to whether it should be repeal or replace, whether we should take it out or whether we should try and change it and add in stuff and take out stuff. It was never going to work. Eventually, they put it to the people. And we became, and I remember actually that day, I remember the whole campaign, and we had been, in 2016, we won marriage equality, which 2015, 2016, we won marriage equality. Fucking huge. I was there in Dublin Castle. It was absolutely incredible. Just being there and the vibe, and everyone was so excited. And but when we were doing the count just before we went to Dublin Castle, it was very kind of iffy. Now it ended up, I think, 70%, in around 68 to 70% in favor of marriage equality. So that was 2 years earlier. And what we learned from that was, have one fucking message, have one badge, have one message, state it clearly, and run with it. And personal stories. personal testimony is everything. To de-demonize women, or stop demonization of anyone that was accessing abortion. The only way you were able to do that was to actually was to talk, was to give personal experience. And so that's what we did. And that's how we won. 20 no, it wasn't 70%. It was 62%, I think. 58 or 62%. Phoebe, if you're in the chat, you probably know better than I do. But we won marriage equality. And I remember my friends saying to me during that campaign, during the repeal campaign, you know, if it passes, if repeal passes, it's going to be by the fucking narrowest of margins. Now, all that week, there was barely 2 hours apart that I was not on some national radio station or local radio station or giving an interview to someone. That whole week was press mania for all of us who told our stories during the campaign. And we were constantly called up every day. It was mental. 62.1. 62.1. I knew it was in around the 60s. Couldn't remember whether it was 58. I can't remember what 58 was. There was something. There was an important vote that was 58, but I can't remember. Yeah, but my friends were like, yeah, you know it's not going to win by bigger margins than marriage equality. That's not going to happen. And so we were focused. We were hopeful that it would get more than 52%. First of all, we needed people to come out and vote. Second of all, we needed the young people to come out and vote. Thirdly, we needed people to come home to vote, which fucking happened in droves, which was amazing. And then we needed the rural vote. We really needed those rural folks to actually come out. Yeah, the rights of the child. Yeah, children's rights, 58. Thank you. I knew there was something else that I was involved in. That was 58. Okay. So I was at the RDS the morning of repeal the 8th when they opened the boxes and started counting. I was there I think I arrived at about 8 a.m. It was incredible. There was so much buzz and so much nervous energy. And by 10 o'clock, by 10:30, I'd say, around 10:30, and all of these boxes had been opening since 9 o'clock, and it was a fucking landslide towards yes. Landslide. I was standing at the barriers in tears. The relief that I felt was incredible. I can't even state it. I can't even put it into words. Yeah, see? We needed the Conservative vote. We needed people in the rural areas. My father is Conservative Sligo man and was generally Conservative man, voted to repeal the 8th. That's huge. You have no idea how much it meant. But to be standing in the RDS as these boxes are open and just to see the joy of people. I've never seen so much happy crying in my fucking life. Like, I thought the feeling of marriage equality couldn't be beaten. That atmosphere in the RDS was incredible and in Dublin Castle was incredible during marriage equality. But holy fuck. You know, the weight. I think the difference between the two was we all felt the weight that came alongside this. This is a once in a generational vote. We would never see the likes of it in our lives again. And we all felt that weight. And that weight fucking lifted within a half an hour in the RDS after the boxes were open. By 10:30, we knew we won. And so we made our way to Dublin Castle. And I was with a few friends of mine from Terminations for Medical Reasons. They were the Fetal Abnormalities group. And we went for lunch. We were like, yeah, I'm getting to that. We pulled up, we went for lunch. I couldn't eat. I was that fucking nervous, even though I knew the result. But we were told, in the back of my head, I was told that it would not beat the marriage equality referendum. And now the question is, by how narrow are we going to win by? Because always in the back of your mind, you're still thinking, 64% turnout. You're still thinking, did we get the rural vote? Did we get the rural vote? Because if we got the rural vote, then we're fine. Well, fucking sitting there in Dublin Castle waiting. Nice day. And your one comes on and says, reads out the fucking count. And we were like, okay, what percentage is that? 66.4% in favor of yes. Dublin fucking Castle erupted. Because for us, it wasn't just it wasn't just vindication for the generations that came before us. It was protection for those who would come after us. The idea of we're standing on giants but paving our own way never rang as true as that moment right there. And so the reason why I'm saying it the way I'm saying it is we had one of the most restrictive laws in the whole world. Not even just in Europe. In the entire world, there was about 4 countries that were worse than us. And now we brought it in by popular vote. So what I would say to Texans who desperately want this bill to fuck off. First of all, I don't blame you. I stand with you. I would love to be there, as Rob Parks indicated at the start. If you want to buy me a ticket, I'm more than welcome to come over. I get a month off a year. I'd be happy to come over and help. But the advice I can give is just learn the lessons from Ireland. I will put in the description after the show. I'll put in the thing of the bill. So you can actually read it yourself. If you're watching this back, you can still read it. I'll also put in the Citizens Assembly because every single one of the meetings are still there on the homepage on that site. So you can still view the entire conversation that Ireland had. And it was an in-depth one to actually listen to be a part of. So, yeah, Chris, exactly. The whole thing is hard to listen to. I just heard from a close friend about her abortion as a teen 45 years later. Personal stories help us males understand. And it's not just that. One of the most influential things that happened was a friend of mine, actually, Richard Boyd Barrett, who was elected as a representative, stood up in our Dáil, in our parliament, and gave his experience of a fatal fetal abnormality. And like that, like you, I had known him for several years. I'd known him for years, and I'd only just found out. It was heart-wrenching. So there's men with stories too. There's non-binary. There's trans men with stories that could fill Texas. And that's what you need. You need people who are willing to stand up and tell their story. And here's the problem that I see with a lot of the discussions around abortion. This whole idea, and this is getting back to my issue and my agreement with not legislating for the hard cases. Trying to explain this now. Yeah, the travel bans. Fucking hell, you're not gonna. Well, again, you have different states, so it's a little bit easier, but it's still, even with that, it's more travel than I had to do, Phoebe. Like that. That's the point. You shouldn't have to travel. You shouldn't have to be taken away from your support networks. This is the point. Now, where I do agree with the anti-choicers is that the hard stories do not make good law. And here's why I say it. When you include legislation and you fasten it in legislation for the hard cases, basically what you're doing is you're putting women like me on trial. First of all, in order to access an abortion, as I said, when I went in trying to get the emergency contraception, I was told, if you're going to lie to me, I can't help you. Those words are forever seared in my memory. Yeah, I know. I wish I could go and help. So, yeah, and this is where I'm kind of going to end with, because I've been going for over an hour and a half. But I wanted to explain this, because when you put provisions in, first of all, you make women like myself have to beg and grovel to people who don't know us, who don't understand what it's like to have been raped. Now, the other thing that really pissed me off about Abbott was he said when he was challenged on the rape and incest part of things, and the fact that they're literally overlooking a whole host of people, vulnerable people. What he said was, we'll just eliminate rape. Well, if it was that simple, why the fuck haven't you done it? Why the fuck haven't you done it before now? Why has it taken this? Because he has no interest in ending rape, nor does he have the ability to do it. Because, first of all, if you were to stop all the rapists before they rape, well, they're not fucking criminals because they haven't done anything yet. Come on, lads. You know? I mean, you might have the intention, but you'd probably not go through with it, or you'd probably have the desire to do it, but you'd never go through with it. In which case, are we going to legislate thought crime? Because until you actually act out your nastiness, then you haven't actually broken any laws. You know? And how are you going to know what a rapist looks like? The other part of this is, when I went to report my rape the night it happened, the first question I was asked was, have you consumed any alcohol this evening? And that's the way they put it to me in the cop shop. I fucking left. I said, well, if that's the way I was that shocked by that question, I was like, I'm not talking to you. And I fucked off out. And I didn't speak to anyone for months. When I came back from my abortion, I didn't go to a hospital or a doctor at all for about 8 months. I didn't see my medical professionals because I didn't trust any of them. Because this is what laws like this does. And when you have to explain to random strangers, because this is always what happens, you have to talk to 2 psychiatrists and 1 GP and 5 fucking lawyers, and this is what happens. And then you have to go through it all again. You have to relive your rape in order to justify you getting an abortion. And that could be 2 months down the road. You know, it's just nasty. Forcing a person to relive their trauma in order to receive healthcare. In what other healthcare do we do that? One of the other things that came up during the course of our campaign was the idea of good abortion, bad abortion. And that, you know, we don't want women to have too many abortions. Like, you know, first of all, who the fuck is counting? You know, if you're counting a stranger's abortions, then that's creepy. That's creepy as fuck. Second of all, let's say you have a 40, I'm going to be generous, 40, 50 year reproduction cycle, right? Let's say you start early and late, and your reproductive health lasts for a span of about 35 to 50 years, depending. I'm being generous here, guys. In what other procedure is having two or maybe three of those procedures deemed as too many? That's the question that they can't answer. In what other sphere in health do we use such disparaging language, such emotive language? That we don't deserve one abortion per decade of our life. In what other, like, can you imagine if that was teeth? If you had a rotten tooth and you had to get your tooth pulled, is it right for any legislator to say that you're abusing the system if you want more than like 3 teeth pulled in your entire existence, adult existence? Like, that's the level of atrocity that we're talking about here. And when you put it into those terms, it's very easy to kind of combat it. It's like, well, what other now, I know a lot of Americans like to use the analogy of harvesting organs, and that's okay. But again, you're getting into the whole dependency issue, and it shouldn't be an issue. Bodily autonomy is bodily autonomy. But what I would actually do, because you're actually playing into their game, I would flip it and say, in what other medical procedure, if you have more than one in your lifetime, in your entire life, more than one is seen as abuse? In what other procedure? In what other area of our lives do we say having more than one is too many? They can't answer it. It's an important talking point, and I don't see as many Americans using it. You should use it. This is one of the things that we used. So, for me, I am in favor of free, safe, and legal, not rare. Rare is the wrong word. Yes, by making it legal, you bring abortion levels down, but that will only come alongside other things like sex education, access to contraceptives, etc., etc. But free, safe, legal. It should not be in the legal system, in my view. It should be regulated, but it should be legal. Free. I know, especially Americans, they don't like healthcare being for free, which is fine. But why do we say free? First of all, your income should not be a barrier to your healthcare. That's simple. And I'm saying across the board. I'm not just talking about abortion. Your income should not be a barrier. That's just my personal feeling on it. Also, by making it illegal, the cost goes up because you need a later term abortion. And the more you have to save up, the longer you have to wait, the more complicated the procedure becomes, and you have to have a later term abortion, which is going to cost in and around, well, in the UK, I know it's between 2 and 3 grand, depending on where you go. Then you have to book time off work. And then it becomes a trade union issue. If you have a trade union in your state, look into it. You have to leave your work in order to travel, in order to get an abortion. Again, in what other medical state of affair would you have to do that? The other thing as well is the window you have of airfare, hotels. As I said, I couldn't afford a hotel. I couldn't afford one. So I had to stay in a hostel. What is going to happen to women in Texas? Women in Alabama? Women in Georgia? If these nasty, nasty bills keep being brought into law, there will be nowhere left for you to go. Um, I want it to be safe. One of the things that I do, now, for the last 6 years, I think 6 years, going on 6 years. Personally speaking, I would like medical professionals to carry out medical procedures. That's just me. If I'm going to have a medical procedure, I would like the person that is giving me the medical procedure to be trained. Voodoo Inquisitor, if you do want to talk, and I mean just talk, my email is open. You can email me if you want. You can email me the story, or you can email saying you want to talk, and we'll just have a conversation. Because one of the things is that you need support. You deserve support. So if you do want to talk, whether it takes 5 minutes or whether it takes 5 hours, please don't hesitate to get in contact with me, because I've done this now for 9 years, talking to other people, talking about my own experience, and it helps. It really does. And it doesn't matter how long ago it was. It helps to actually talk to someone who's been through it. Maybe not the exact same thing, but who understands. So if you do want to talk, if anyone here wants to talk, my email is always open. We will arrange something for absolute sure. I'm here. But one of the things that I do is I am not a medical professional. I want to be. I'm looking to be an EMT at some point, but I'm not. I'm not going to pretend I'm not. I am. But since 2014, I think, ish, 2015, one of the things that I've done is I have an understanding with Women Help Women and Women on Web. And these are two essential, basic essential groups. And the understanding that we came to was as an organization called Need an Abortion Ireland. We bought in hundreds, basically, of abortion pills while it was still illegal. We could have gotten up to 14 years imprisonment for this. And this is kind of where I want to leave it. It's going to take another fucking 20 minutes probably. But I still have 80 boxes in my front drawer. One of the reasons why I don't really do anything on a Saturday is some of the Saturdays in the afternoon, what I do is I go and I sit in the front room. Even now, especially during the pandemic, I've had 17 in the last year, where I will sit in someone's front room. I will explain what the abortion pills do, how to take them, and I will sit there as they take them. Not to provide any pressure to take them, because they've approached us and asked us for them. But in order to prevent what happened to me, I was alone. No one should be alone. Absolutely no one should be alone going through this. And so if anything does go wrong, if you have a blood thinning disease, if there's a myriad of other clot factors or any other factors, or if you panic, here's the problem with these laws. If you panic and you've had an abortion, taken an abortion pill, statistically, you are less likely to call for an ambulance. And that means by the time any medical help gets to you, you're in serious shit. So what we do is we sit and we talk to women going through abortion. We hand them the pills, we explain how to take them, and we hold their hand. And we are there until the abortion takes place. And until we know for certain that these people are okay medically. Because if anything does happen, is it not a comfort to have someone there that's willing to be your voice when you can't be? to say to a medical professional that they're having a miscarriage, because the pills don't actually show up. There's no way of proving that someone took a medically induced abortion. There's no way. And so if you're able to say, she's having a miscarriage, they're having a miscarriage, and I want to be beside my friend. This person is my friend. She's panicking. Can you help her? And if you are the person there and you get the phone and you're able to call for help, the severity of complications are basically null and void, because especially in Dublin or in certain parts of the country, you're 15, 20 minutes from a hospital, max. So it is important. In the rural spaces where I used to do it, because I was living in West Cork, you could be up to 40 minutes from a hospital. So being able to call someone immediately is absolutely fucking vital. So Texas, take it from us. Get the fucking abortion pills in. Stock up while you can. And fucking help. One of the things that we did in the 70s and 80s when it was illegal was the Speaking of Imelda movement. And what would happen is you would phone a number and you'd say, I'm looking to speak to Imelda. Imelda stands for Ireland making England the legal destination for abortion. That's what Imelda stands for. And so what would happen is you would call this number and say, I'm looking for Imelda. And they would organize your abortion. Okay, can you speak now? And I actually know the person one of the people that set up the Imelda. She now lives in London, but she was one of the people that were sticking up the fucking stickers in the bathroom stalls. If you need abortion, here's where it's called. And so that's one of the things that you can do. That's one of the things you can do. Invite someone to stay in your house. Give them the abortion pills. Learn how to use them. And fucking help. The other thing, following on from that, is again, if you get enough numbers, you go into the cop shops. You go down to your legislators. You go into the courts and say, I helped procure an abortion. Arrest me. Sue me. Someone. You could back the courts up for fucking years. If you were the one to go in and rat yourself out. Because there's no law at the moment, there's no exclusion for someone confessing to doing it. Now, the reason behind this, again, you need the numbers though. You do need the numbers. We went in, it was back in 2015, I think, 2016. We went in and it was in the run up to the election, I think it was. And we all signed a letter to say that we have helped procure abortions in Ireland. Like here. Because we confessed. And we went to Pearse Street, which is one of the biggest cop shops in the country. And we said, we're here to confess to a crime. And you could see the copper behind the station. He was like, what the fuck is this? 250 of us all walked in at the same time. We have a letter of confession. Yeah. And so we were like, arrest us. And he was like, I'm not going to arrest you. Why? We have the abortion pill. I'll give you a box. I'll show you. And I'm going to give them out to whoever needs a fucking abortion. Arrest me. And when you put it up to them, the law becomes, you can't, in effect, make it productive. You can't make it work. You can't back up what you're saying. Well, what is the jurisdiction? What is the punishment for someone who self-incriminates, who walks in and confesses? I can't live with myself anymore. I'm going to confess. What are you going to do? You going to arrest me? Or is the law not functioning? And if the law doesn't function, and here's one of the things that we found, if the law doesn't function and there is no punishment, what the fuck is the point in having the law? In which case, the law needs to change. If you can't enforce it, what's the point? And again, it opened it up to the idea of what is law. Yes, the law is only as good as the willingness to enforce it and the willingness to follow it too. You can't have laws that people are not willing to fucking follow, you know? Especially blanket bans. This is what happened with prohibition of alcohol. People just got them underground anyway. And now that we have the abortion pill and more people are tech savvy and more people, like we were fucking flying drones. We were delivering abortion pills in the west coast of Ireland via drone, which was fun. It was the first time I ever got to fly a drone. It was cool. So yeah, that's another thing. But here's some of the talking points that, like, if you only have a short space of time, here's some of my little snippets that I like to use, my phrases, my go-to. So one of the things that you will face when you talk about abortion is term limits. What term limits are you for? Are you for 20 weeks? Are you for 12 weeks? Is it when the baby is viable? When it's yeah. Best response to this question: as early as possible, but as late as necessary. Anti-choicers hate it. As early as possible, but as late as necessary. Yeah, these are my phrases. These are my go-to phrases. I love it. The next one is people choose abortion for a lot of different reasons. None of them are easy. All of them are valid. Thank you, Claire Daly. That was said at, I think, the second March for Choice, and it's always stayed with me. You don't know the reason behind people opting for abortion, nor should you. It's not an easy decision that we come to, but it's a valid reason, whatever the reason. And it gets rid of the idea of good abortion, bad abortion. You don't get dragged into that debate, especially if they're trying to drag you into that debate. Like, well, who am I to decide on someone's decision, on someone's reason? It's not me. So, none of them are easy. All of them are valid. Yeah, one of the things that came out of the UN Court of Human Rights was women are not incubators. That's one of the things that the UN Court of Human Rights decided. It was the chair. I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head, but he came out and said, you use your women as incubators. Women are not incubators. We have names, we have thoughts, we have opinions, we deserve privacy. Simple. Fucking simple. The other thing is when you talk about continuing pregnancy, don't refer to it as pregnancy, or anything. Don't refer to anything as anything other than forced pregnancy, because that's what we're talking about when we talk about these bills. That's what we're talking about. The other thing is about life. Life is life, and life is life, and life is life. How do you get around the idea of abortion is murder and life is life is life is life? A fetus in a womb is a potential life. Potential is never a guarantee. That's my favorite argument against the idea of life is life is life is life. The other one is abortions will happen whether you approve it or not. I'm living testimony. Didn't matter who said what to anyone. Didn't matter how many great arguments you came up with. In the moment, you, and I mean the royal you, not any individual, nobody, bar fucking nobody, was going to stop me from having an abortion. And when a woman is that desperate, when her family is that desperate, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is they're going to have it. And the question is how? Do you support them as the adults, who pays their taxes for their healthcare? Or do you infantilize them and force them away from their support networks? Did I miss Jay? Jay! Do you know what, Jay? I probably will open it up in a minute. I do want to get opinions, but I just want to finish this because I knew if I had anyone else in here, I'd get distracted. But yeah, I'll definitely bring it in if you want. Um, the other talking point then. Uh, oh, I'll come back in on that one, Tim, because I have yeah. Uh, Restrictions make abortions more expensive, less safe, and unnecessarily difficult for vulnerable people. So one of the groups that started up was Disabled People for Choice. They were one of the more vocal people who were saying, we have disabilities and we need abortions too, especially if our health is at risk. So that's an important one. Yeah, maybe if you don't, maybe you shouldn't have sex if you aren't prepared to have a kid, or it takes two to tango. All of that is good abortion, bad abortion bullshit. And my opinion on that is, if you can't do your research, maybe you shouldn't have an opinion. But again, I would actually bring it back to people choose abortions for plenty of reasons. None of them are easy, and all of them are valid. So again, you're not getting dragged into that horrible, nasty, good abortion, bad abortion. Let's justify this, and because that's hypocrisy. That's what that is. So you want to avoid that as much as you fucking can. Let me see. Jay, if you want to come in, or if anyone wants to come in, you can email me at craftykeelah@gmail.com. Now I have to actually log into that account. Oh, I am logged in. Okay. It's one of those rare instances where I was thinking ahead. But yeah, the big thing, lads, forced pregnancy. And it shouldn't be a staple of any civilized society. And if you bring it back down to forced pregnancy and use those talking points, you throw them off guard. Yes, they want an argument. But here's the thing. Before I was raped, before I had my abortion, I argued and I got so defensive. We have the experience. We have the truth. You can't beat the truth. You can't beat personal experience. You can't. And that's simple fact. You can't beat it. No problem, Phoebe. Have a good night. It was great to have you here. Thank you for backing me up. That was definitely a weight off my mind. The simple fact of the matter is, poverty means healthcare restrictions. If you can afford it, you can go anywhere you want. You will get your healthcare. You can afford healthcare. When you can't afford healthcare already, and one of the things that this bill does is it prevents your insurance company from giving you anything. That's scary. Like for I know Americans love their insurance, because it's the only thing really keeping them safe. But fucking hell, like, it's manic. It's manic. So thank you guys for listening to my rants. So if anyone wants to come on, do tag me in the chat, or even email me. Ooh. Well, definitely get in contact. I'll be around Dublin. I recommend anywhere but Dublin. Yes, Jay, I got your email. Sending you the thingamajiggy. Sadly, Tattie can't come in. Because we're talking politics. Tattie, thank you again for being here, and thanks for helping with the little emotes. I like my emojis. If there is anyone else out there that does want to come on and have a conversation, would you like an opposing view? I mean, you can give me an opposing view. I think I've heard it all, and but you can, if you want to come in, by all means. I wouldn't exclude anyone because it's all about having a conversation. Do you know what I mean? This whole thing is about having a conversation. Yes, I do need support, and you give me plenty of fucking support. You, Tusk, Essie, Rob, Michael, I have fucking phenomenal support here. Hello, Mr. J.
Hello. Can you
How
hear
are
me?
you? It's a weird thing because when I started the stream, I've had my headphones on all along, just so I could like prevent or try to prevent being distracted by some weird noise in the apartment. This I didn't realize I needed them. How are you, man?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I noticed you were on the abortion issue.
Yes.
I was on Speed of Sound's channel there for a little bit. I didn't notice that you were live. We were being foolish middle-aged men. But yeah, I noticed your. So I haven't heard a lot of your monologue about.
It went on for 2 hours. It's epic.
Yeah.
Can't believe it.
Yeah, I don't always get, like, it's funny because I normally get your notifications, but for this stream I didn't get a notification. YouTube's apparently being a prick. So you're talking about Texas and their anti-abortion thingy? Okay. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with this one other than the fact that I heard it's like 6 weeks.
Yeah, 6
Is that
weeks.
correct?
Yes, but what they're doing is they're not prosecuting it. They're not taking cases against individuals. They're encouraging other people so ordinary citizens can take cases against other people and entities and win up to minimum, if they're successful, minimum of 10 grand.
So they want 10 grand. So okay, what's the burden of?
It's the defendant that needs to prove that they haven't helped someone get an abortion after 6 weeks, not the person that brings the case. It's scary.
Wow. So it's not innocent until proven guilty. It's guilty until proven innocent.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that sounds like Texas. Very much sounds like Texas.
And JL is in the chat. JL, if you want to come in and have a chat, by all means. Yeah. JL makes the point. If you're an Uber driver who drove a woman to a clinic and that woman had an abortion after 6 weeks, you can be sued for abetting the abortion. If you are a mother who gives a loan to your child and they don't tell you, just because you didn't know the money was being used for an abortion doesn't mean that you can that you're exempt from the law. You can still be prosecuted.
But you have to. Whoa.
And you have to prove that you didn't give them the money for the intention of abortion.
Accessory after the fact has to be proven by the state, not by the person.
Not anymore.
Wow. Wow. I didn't even realize this one was that bad.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I knew it was bad. I knew it was bad because when I heard about it, I was just like, oh, let's see if they and I figured that it would probably get passed given Texas's history, but yeah,
it's painful. It's very painful.
And the Supreme Court, of course, has not weighed. Wait, the Supreme Court did weigh in on this, didn't they?
They did weigh in and said it was they weren't going to block it from going through.
I know 3 of the justices said no. They said it was a gross, like kind of a gross overreach. But yeah, this seems like basically yeah, it doesn't sound like it's actually a crime, though.
Right. So I'll read off again just real quickly what the law actually says, and then I'll bring Tim in. Abortion is legal until heartbeat is present, and heartbeat in inverted commas, like, because it's not actually a heartbeat, because it's not a developed heart. No exception for rape or incest. There is an exception for medical emergencies, but that's not exactly clear what they mean by medical emergency and how severe it has to be. Doctors can be sued if they perform or intend to perform an illegal procedure. Public officials are prohibited from enforcing it, so they can't actually take cases. Private citizens can sue for a minimum of 10K. The private citizen does not need a connection to the patient.
There's no maximum?
No. And that's part of the scary point. They do not need to be a resident in Texas. And clinics that are sued unjustly cannot recover their legal fees. But if they lose the case and they're found guilty, they have to pay both legal fees. So
that renders them persona non grata, I think. Wow,
JL. Yeah, I'm bringing JL in here. JL.
Hey.
That is a horrible law.
Yeah, this is arguably the most draconian abortion law that's ever been passed in the United States. It's really, really crazy. And like Crafty was saying, it turns normal citizens, your neighbors, into bounty hunters looking for an opportunity to sue somebody if they were to suspect something. And of course, it puts all the onus on everybody else. So and essentially, I can claim it and file suit, which filing suit is not difficult in the state of Texas, but then you have to defend yourself. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And I can say that, and this, despite all of this insanity, it can be. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Doesn't this? I just want to interject. Doesn't this open? I mean, what happened to like frivolous claims? I mean,
there's no statute against slap suits in Texas. Yeah, that doesn't exist in the state of Texas. All of this comes from, so you got to understand Greg Abbott, like the governor who put this thing forward.
Yeah,
this is a guy who how he won the governorship, or how he bankrolled his governorship, was he's paralyzed. He's paralyzed from the waist down. He's in a wheelchair, and how that happened was it was an accident. He was out walking in his neighborhood, and a neighbor's branch fell out of a neighbor's tree, landed on him, paralyzed him, and then he sued that individual and won a ton of money off that. And then once he became governor, then he used it to bankroll his governorship and his run for governor. And once he became governor, one of the first things he did was he passed a law that people couldn't do that anymore. So he shut that down. So he put a cap on how much you could sue for in the event of that, because previously there was no cap, and he sued him for like millions. And then once he became governor, he put a cap on that so that no one else could do the same thing that he did. So this is the mentality that's behind it. Now, if you look at the politics in Texas as of recent,
why would he say? Well, that's good for the goose and not for the gander kind of mentality.
That's the point.
Yeah.
How did he reason that one out? If he bankrolled off that, how did he pass that for the state and think that wasn't a good thing when he bankrolled off of it?
Because he's business, because he favors businesses. He favors businesses over the individual. And so, and that was it's always been a commerce first thing. So if the business, like insurance companies, and so he favored those companies over the individuals that they were serving. And this puts the onus on this puts the majority of it back on the citizen while protecting them from giant lawsuits like he won. And that's what got him in bed with that. So that's the mentality of the man. Now, in recent years, when you look at what happened with the race against Beto, when Beto was racing against Cruz, and you look at essentially what occurred during the 2020 election, then we obviously see that with DFW, with Harris County, Austin, we begin to see that Texas is very much purple. It's no longer a red state. It's turning blue. Greg Abbott is up for re-election. So that's why this came right there at the end. And he was like, wow, the timing is very suspect. That's the initial thing that got me. It was like, the timing on this is so suspect. It's not like he kicked this off like 3 or 4 years ago. He kicked this off in the year that he's up for re-election. And the point being was, he realizes that he's in a bad spot. There are people there are Democrats that are gunning for his seat solely based upon his reaction to the log alert, to Texas's response to the the situation. I don't want to get crafty demonetized. So
I'm probably already demonetized at this point.
So that's the whole thing, is he realizes he's in trouble. He realizes that his seat is in danger just because he mishandled the state's response. When your state is up there with like leading the nation and like millions of infected, he's like, that's bad. When you're sitting there saying, yeah, everybody can open, all businesses can open because he values business, all businesses can reopen, and then boom, we're at the top of the charts. That this is
for COVID. Yeah,
exactly. So so what he's doing here, what this is a desperate play to his base, to his to the conservative Christian base, because he's always lauded himself as a powerful representative of the conservative Christian movement. And so he's literally
firing. Exactly. That's not a good. I mean, if you're seeing a trend, somebody must be feeding him some numbers, seeing it like a trend increasing in these particular voting numbers in that particular demographic to where where he would gain some kind of I don't know, grounds in an election. But I mean, we see this here in California. We saw this here in California. I mean, it depends. I mean, Texas is obviously quite a bit of a different state, but we see this, with this recall that happened with Governor Newsom. And it was kind of funny about that whole re-election. I live in California. Is I voted no for the recall, but then you get to vote for a person just in case the majority is a yes. And I voted for Patrick Kilpatrick, which is kind of funny. He's an actor. He actually, if anybody here is familiar with the movie Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, he plays the man with the Tiffany tooth, is what Remo Williams calls him in the movie. I voted for that guy just in case it became a yes. And I told my wife to do the same thing. She was like looking over all the people, and she goes, "Yeah, I'll put him down too, just in case it becomes a yes." I said, "Yeah, he ran. I think he used to run more Republican or Libertarian, kind of like moderate Republican to Libertarian, and now he's kind of running as a moderate Democrat." But anyway, I think we're kind of seeing a trend where we're seeing kind of people kind of, at least here in California, this. I don't know how. I think I may be going off on the wrong tangent. I don't know how they were able to push this through, and I don't know why it is that the Supreme Court would allow something like this to happen, where you're seeing something. They haven't labeled it as a crime, right? So it seems to be more of a civil.
Yeah, that's how they did it. That's how they were able to swing the. Yeah, they worded this in such a way that they were able to swing this by federal jurisprudence. So they can't. Yeah, the judicial review is not there, and everybody recognizes that. But the problem is the legalese protects it in that way because of the way they've done it, which is why the Supreme Court didn't weigh in on it as a matter of legislation, legislation. Just because they're not prosecuting crimes. They're making it a civil.
It was the idea of it can't be unconstitutional when it's not dealing with the state body in relation to individuals. Jeff, my email is craftykeelah@gmail.com. You see how I spell my name there in the chat? It's the same thing. I'm going to bring Tim in because he has a different opinion, and it's okay to have a different opinion. So
before he jumps in, I should say, here in the chat. So Angel Gamer brings up a good point. How many abortion Karens are going to be out there trying to get 10K for reporting now? That's a problem you're going to have. Mr. E-Man said this law seems like the witch hunts are back on.
Yeah.
Good point. So yeah.
It's actually worse. It's actually worse than that, because the whole idea of how many Karens, it's not just how many Karens, it's the idea that you don't have to live in the state of Texas in order to file a lawsuit.
And
wait, what?
What? Yeah, that's
wait,
crazy.
Stop.
All you have to do is be in Texas.
Yeah.
Wait, excuse me?
Yeah. Enjoy that one. So you can be like, can you imagine any of the anti-choicers throughout the country? All you have to do is visit Texas, start this lawsuit, and then you can be funded by the anti-choicers without
how many
the
groups?
anti-choice organization taking this case. This is
But
the
how
fear.
many? Yeah, I mean, this shows kind of an openness to allow groups to basically, like, let's say nonprofit organizations, if they want to label themselves as this, to bring in people from out of state to coalesce in the state of Texas to kind of like look for possible reports of abortion beyond the legal limit, or that legal, you know, that the legal limit. When I say legal limit, the legal limit that's being proposed in this, that's been passed in this law in Texas.
That's why I'm looking at it. That's why I'm looking at it. The timing, all of these problems. We're looking at the implications of this in, say, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Like what this entails, like what can come off of this. And so we're looking at, to them, they're just throwing a snowball, but we're looking at what it's going to be at the end of the mountain, at the bottom of the mountain. And the problem with this is that the reason he would do this, it's like a Hail Mary. It's a Hail Mary to save his governorship, because you can guarantee that the minute he gets ousted from office, if someone comes in here and does this, you know, because if he's in, then he's in. But if he gets ousted, they're just going to repeal this. Whatever Democrat takes that seat is overturned. It's like, no, this is gone. No, they're going to strike it down.
I wouldn't be too confident about Democrats in Texas. I'm from Texas, so it's wishful thinking. I mean, the cities, you can look at the maps. Cities are obviously densely populated and usually blue, while the rural areas are very red. But thank you for going over jurisprudence. I'm glad someone knowledgeable in that could actually just bring that up, because it's almost like a technicality. I'm not sure how long it'll last. It's kind of a ridiculous thing. Even a person who's really on the fence about this whole thing. The thing is like, where do you guys draw the line? Do you guys allow third trimester or partial birth abortions?
I'm gonna approach this first. First of all, hello, Taranti is in the chat, and Tatty, I saw it. I fucking saw it. And Audrey Rabbit is in the chat. Hello, Audrey. So here's the thing.
Be listening. I'm going to mute for a moment. Sorry. Go ahead.
You're all right. When it comes to term limits, the reason why I say as early as possible but as late as necessary is because I know the complications that come with pregnancy. And when you try to legislate for all of them, the problem is you create more problems than you're solving. So yes, when you have good sexual education, when you have contraceptives available, and all of that, women are bound to find out that they're pregnant a lot earlier in their term. Which, and if you have abortion legally accessible, it means that they're able to have abortion before or as early in the development of that fetus as possible, which is, in my view, the desired outcome. You know, before it gets to the point of viability or near viability. The second thing is that as late as necessary, the other point, the twist in that turn, is the simple fact is nature is cruel. Nature is very, very cruel. And so when it comes to later term abortions, these are pregnancies that were wanted, that were desperately wanted. And something has happened, either to the woman or to the fetus, that now the pregnancy is in question for whatever reason. It's not for me to judge their reasons. That's for them to decide. They have to live with it. And so when you get into this idea of as late as necessary, third trimester abortions, here's the problem that I have with that whole attitude. It's the idea, the infantilizing bullshit way people look at women as if they all of a sudden, on a whim, decide at last minute you carry this pregnancy for 7 to 8 months, and then all of a sudden you wake up and decide, nah, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just gonna have an abortion. What women in your fucking world are doing that? Do you know what I mean? And I'm not aiming at you, Tim. I'm just saying in general. What women in your world, in your life, are like that. And if you can't think of 3, then you can't think of any. I'm sorry.
Well, I see the opposite of it. I see it almost as a fashion statement, like a Planned Parenthood eugenics program where they have it. It's almost like cool. There's people that are like, oh, this is my 13th abortion. Like, it's fun and it's cute and stuff. And at a certain point, that gets kind of disgusting. So, you know,
how many people do you know are going around saying, oh, it's a cute little accessory to have 13 abortions?
What's that?
How many women in your personal life, in your real life?
No, none in my personal. No,
well,
definitely not.
Shut the fuck up.
Okay, that's kind of Well, so that's kind of an incredulity argument there, or like an
so I can't see people who say that and then comment on that.
Do you think?
I have to have that directly in my life to have comments about it?
Hold on. May I say? Wait, hold on a second. Do you think that they're getting these abortions paid in full?
Dude, I have no idea how an abortion works or anything about it. I'm actually here to learn from you guys because you guys are so pro it. I might as well talk to people who are very pro.
Okay, but you're against it, but you don't have a learned opinion about it.
I just want to say, first of all, again, when I say shut the fuck up about it, it's not aimed at anyone directly. I have 2 new members. Voodoo Inquisitor became a member and Angel Gamer. So thank you guys. I now have another fucking 9 emojis to stress over and design. Because I have no idea what to design. But I
need to move to Ireland. It's the only place that you can use fucking like it's a like I was when I was in the military. It's like it's a foregone. It's like a foregone. It's like no. I mean, there's nothing in the United States. There's I can't remember the law. The other guy might be able to tell me what it is. I'm blanking on the name of it. There's a law that prevents insurance companies from paying for abortions, for covering abortions. This was something that was covered in the ACA. So I don't know if you're making this kind of argument like this is a fashion statement kind of thing. It's going to be like $300 or $400 a pop to have an abortion.
At the very minimum.
At the very minimum, depending on the stage, right? So that's why I was asking that question. But go ahead.
But that's scary. I mean, for me, I can only speak for myself in terms of having an abortion. It was $2,500 just for the procedure alone.
Whoa.
And I hate to say it, but I haven't got 13 instances of and this is my problem with that attitude. And it's something that's instilled into people of looking at women through an infantilized lens as though they're not capable adults who are able to weigh up complicated decisions with serious weight on them. And they're just going to look at it as something frivolous to do. It's
my wife,
something we do.
Well, my wife basically had an abortion, but that's because they didn't detect a heartbeat and she had to have a DNC, which is basically the same thing.
It seems like you guys are overgeneralizing. Like I'm saying, every single person who has had an abortion has had 19 and they love it and they think it's cute and stuff. I said, there's a kind of a gray area here, I think. And there's people on other ends of that gray area where it's like, no, never, and then all the way to, oh, it's a fashion statement. So that's what I was saying. There are people on all ends of that spectrum, and I'm just trying to figure out like where you guys are, like where the kind of atheist, like secular, lefty kind of people are these days, where it's like, where do you draw the line? And I understand like the rape and incest is very, very, very small amount percentage wise of actual abortions. And isn't there like a Planned Parenthood way to get free abortions?
Not as far as I'm aware. But I don't live in the States. What I would say is, again, I wasn't intending to direct it at you, so I apologize if that's how it came across. For me, those kind of frivolous people who just decide to have abortions, there's 2 ways of looking at it. Either you can tar everyone with the same brush, and then everyone suffers, even the people who really, really need abortions because you don't like their reasons or how often they're getting one. Or totally. You can have regulation. And what regulation would do was would see help being provided, proper a reintroduction of sexual education and contraceptives. For me as a 33-year-old woman, I can't go in and ask for it to be sterilized just in case I change my mind. Do you know what I mean? So the idea is to trust women with their healthcare. And my personal view on it is, if they are not associated with you in any way, then why are you worried? And again, that's not aimed at you. That's just in general, the royal you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there is something to say about the conservative way, the Christian kind of conservative down in Texas. It is very arbitrary, I'll say, and there's a lot of nuance here that we kind of, there is, and that's what you're trying to bring up. It's kind of like the one size fit all for this mRNA vaccine or whatever. Like, you can't just, because it's going to kill people. It's going to kill some people. Just like if 1,000 people ate peanuts, maybe one person would keel over. Yeah. So, and that's the same with abortion. There's all these different variables and things. So to say 6 weeks, I think that's a little premature. I think if you're a little overweight, I don't even think a woman would even know. Truthfully,
no. My period is so irregular that I could be 6 weeks waiting for a period. Like, so 6 weeks to me is nothing, because I have them irregular, and a lot of women do. I'm gonna bring Jeff in. Hi, Jefferson.
Howdy.
And it's not to gang up on you, I promise you, Tim. I love these conversations, because only when we take the animosity out of the conversation can we really begin to understand where we're at as normal people. This thing has been so politicized that we can't actually have the conversation. So I'm happy that we can.
Unfortunately, everything in America is very politicized right now. I mean,
and polarized.
Personal health choices, or your cup of tea, if it's Trump or it's Biden. And I think there's a certain extent that's intentional. As long as you keep these tribalistic minds feuding within each other, they kind of forget about what's actually really important, I think.
Yeah. Jefferson, how are you doing?
Hey, pretty good. I did want to weigh in on the one thing. There is a general rule. It's part of the Hyde Amendment passed in the United States, because it's a common thing that comes from sort of the anti-choice side over here, that we've got to do something to stop, because the federal government is subsidizing the quote unquote murder of babies. That women can go to a Planned Parenthood and get an abortion procedure on the public dime. The Hyde Amendment makes it so that's not possible. No federal money can be spent that way. It's illegal. There are some states, though, within their own constitution that provide for the what's the best word for it? Investment of funds into. So some of them allow for the state funds to go into an emergency situation for women in the cases of rape and incest. Mm-hmm. And they would go through Planned Parenthood. But as far as elective abortion goes, I don't think there's a single state that has any mechanism that diverts public money into an elective abortion scheme. The federal government strictly outlaws it.
But there is private money that goes into Planned Parenthood, correct? That pays for these procedures.
You have to pay for them on your own. You have to come up with the money. A woman has to come up with that money on her own. Yeah.
Well, that's a different element if that's true.
That is. Just look up the Hyde Amendment. The federal government is not allowed to subsidize any elective abortion.
I understand, but I was talking about private money, personally. Like, people who donate to Planned Parenthood, pretty sure they have all of these offices. I walked up to one in Denver one time, and all these anti-abortion people were there, and they had all these nasty pictures of like aborted fetuses. I just went and talked to them. I was just seeing what they were talking about. But pretty sure you can get your stuff done at Planned Parenthood. Pretty sure.
You can't. You cannot. You have to pay the money in order to, even if you go to Planned Parenthood, the funding that goes to Planned Parenthood is to pay for the health services, the screening service, to pay for the salaries of the people that work there, to bring in the medical professionals there. It pays for things like birth control and things and their health programs. If Planned Parenthood is doing something, because a lot of what they end up providing in terms of abortion services are abortifacient drugs. There's two of them. And those are not allowed to be federally subsidized either, right? And as far as now, private money that goes to Planned Parenthood, they could use that money and pay and invest in those kinds of drugs. Yeah. But as far as even in those cases, though, the women have to pay for that drug, that abortifacient drug, with their money. Money has to exchange hands. They don't get that from a fund. There's no Medicaid waiver. There's no EBT thing. Nothing like that. That is not allowed due to the Hyde Amendment. The only time public money can go towards an abortifacient or an abortion procedure to terminate a pregnancy is if the state allows it, and the only states, to the best of my knowledge, that only allow it are in emergency circumstances or to save the life of the woman or rape and incest. That's it.
Yeah, and the pills that he's talking about there is is mifepristone and misoprostol, and these are what would medically induce a miscarriage. Yes. It's pre 10 weeks. Yep. Usually, and the longer then you go after that, the less likely it's going to be used or it's going to be effective. So.
Cool, good information.
They can cost anywhere between £500 and £800.
Yeah, I think in a state that's decently stocked with them. Well, no, actually, now that I think about it, if you go to a country like Vietnam, you can buy one of those drugs for probably around $180 a pill, $150.
I still have 80 boxes in my drawer.
Wow.
We did a deal with Women on Web when abortion was illegal, and we could have gotten 14 years in prison for it. And this is what I was talking about earlier. So I stocked up. Well, there's a good few of us now around the country that have stocked up. And so we buy them from Women on Web and Women Help Women. And they're two very reliable sources. We got them at source, so they were like 80, 90 quid. And I think obviously they knocked some money off because of how serious it was, how desperate women were becoming. And like that, part of what I do for the last 6 years is sit in women's front rooms and while they're taking these pills and explain them. And I would much rather, I'm going to be very, very honest. I would much rather these be carried out. They're safer than aspirin, by the way. The WHO places these pills safer than aspirin, but I would much rather them being under medical supervision because I'm not a medical professional. I shouldn't have to do it. And yet there is still that deep mistrust in doctors. So they turn to us.
So there was a 2015 Forbes article examined data and broke down numbers, concluding that taxpayers subsidize about 24% of all abortion costs in the U.S. Federal. Taxpayers pay 6.6%. The remaining 17.4% is paid by the state taxpayers. Forbes estimates that this is equivalent of taxpayers paying for about 250,000 abortions a year.
That is slightly because again, you have to wonder exactly how they're breaking that down. Like I said, in certain cases, if the states have a fund, most states have a fund for abortions in cases of emergency. So even if you're running into it, you can run into those extreme cases where a pregnant woman is involved in an accident or something like that, and there are complications, and they need to terminate her pregnancy in order to save her life. That counts. That counts as one of them. So that would be funding for that. There would be funding for there's state funds for, like I said, if it's rape and the pregnancy is the result of either a rape, a sexual assault, or incest in the family. Some of that state money comes out of there. Federal money can sometimes back up those state funds. I'm not exactly sure how Forbes is breaking that down, because the one thing that can't happen is a direct federal payment for an abortion for an American, for any patient. That cannot happen. If you have a female relative and she wanted to pursue an abortion at a Planned Parenthood, they require her to pay up front or set up a payment plan. She has to come up with a way to pay for it. There's always this stuff in the background, like, because Planned Parenthood, well, that was part of the whole ACORN thing. The government wanted to defund Planned Parenthood because of this kind of stuff. There have been always rumors, that if Planned Parenthood is taking donations for quote unquote services, i.e. they're purchasing equipment, they're purchasing drugs, they're doing health campaigns and, getting out in the public, that they're taking some of that money and they're diverting it over to their services. They probably are in terms of equipment, hygiene, cleanliness, paying service providers, that kind of thing. There is some money probably being diverted over that, but it's an accounting. That's just an accounting thing. The idea that the image that's being put out there by a lot of anti-choice groups is that women, if they just happen to be down on their luck, can go into a Planned Parenthood and the cost of that abortion procedure or that drug will be covered for them. It won't. The government cannot. The government's not going to. The federal government is not going to provide coverage for that or provide the funds for that. It's going to either have to come from a state program or she might be getting help from some kind of private aid group.
The other thing to note, and I had to learn it, is always look at whether it's an op-ed, an opinion piece, or whether it's an actual journalistic piece, because that will tell you, and then research the journalist. So what happens in a lot of these magazines and a lot of these newspapers is they'll open it up to private individuals who are not actually trained journalists to give their opinion. These are commentators. And so what happens is that you have the likes of think tanks, like in Ireland, we have the Iona Institute, allegedly. Anyone that knows the Iona Institute knows why we all always say allegedly after every statement about Iona Institute. But the Iona Institute allegedly have these members who are on the newspaper reels, giving out all of this information, quote unquote, that they've allegedly made up. That we can prove that they've made up because it's all bullshit. And then pretend to act like just a normal citizen, like they're not a part of this religious fundamentalist group. And so they come across as just the regular Joe Soap. But in the background, they're working to restrict laws all over the place. They're part of this think tank that wants to see the annihilation of certain, like I think they wanted to see the closure of mosques and shit. So like these are allegedly, they're not a nice group. But Jasper E, thank you for becoming a member. And Voodoo Inquisitor, I see everything. I wonder if Crafty Keelah knows I just became a member to make her do more emojis. Well, now I have to, or I'll just get Tatty to do it because I'm shit.
Well, I do agree that it's kind of hard to find journalism. There's a thing called the Smith-Mundt Act. I think Barack Obama passed it, where basically the media can and will and does lie to you. And there's journalists that reported that ivermectin is horse medicine, just as of recently, which I actually see people like Red's Rhetoric and Steve McRae and others actually spitting that out as if it's true as well. So you gotta watch your sources, because it's funny, because ivermectin is 2015 Nobel Prize winner, for over 4 billion doses administered, cures river blindness and a host of other things. So there are disinformation agents, and actually here in America, there's think tanks on all sides. I mean, it's insane what you have to do to validate something.
Same here. I've often had to write into a newspaper because they've gotten something really fucking stupidly wrong, and like I would identify as center left. So I'm not extreme left. I'm not like extreme right. I am kind of center left. Just on abortion, I am very fucking liberal because I've been through it. So when it comes to, you always have, no matter who's writing, you can't get away from their own personal bias. The difference is what, okay, for a newspaper, that's one thing. As a journalist, journalistic integrity suggests that you have to remove your own personal feeling out of the piece and just submit the facts. If you're not willing to do that, or if you mislead people in whatever place in the spectrum you are, then you're doing a disservice, in my view, to the people that are reading your piece. Because for me, it's all about giving people the information, seeing them as adults, first of all, giving people the information and allowing them to make up their own minds. And that's why I would hope that I don't come across as attacking anyone for their beliefs. rather I try to explain why it might be problematic.
So are you pro-choice on abortion and then anti-choice on mandatory vaccines for everyone?
I wouldn't want to see vaccines be mandated, be put into law, because again, it's a healthcare choice. And for instance, my nephew has a severe fear of needles, and he's 12 now. He goes catatonic when it comes to needles for days. So am I going to say that he has to be vaccinated? Probably not until he's comfortable with it, not until they find a way to give it orally or a different way. Do I believe that vaccines are dangerous? No. Well, they're going to be dangerous to some, because there's no human body that is the same. So the way in which we take vaccines is not going to be the same. Like my sister got very fucking sick with the second, well, not very sick. She wasn't hospitalized or anything, but for days she was feeling very sick. Whereas the 2 day when I got my second vaccine, and we both got the same vaccine, by the way, we both got the Pfizer. I was back in work that day because there was nothing wrong with me. I was in work the next day, So it depends.
I'm glad that you're logically consistent there, because a lot of people aren't. It's my body, my choice in one regard, but it's mandatory. To hell with people who are immunocompromised, or here in America, it's a serious problem.
Here's where I will disagree. Okay, so at the same time that I wouldn't want it to be mandatory, I don't believe that it should be in legal terms. If you refuse to take the vaccine, and you're an adult, you don't believe that you should have the right to live as everybody else does. You are taking the vaccine. You have to deal with those consequences of not dining indoors, of not putting people at risk. And if there is a chance that you are at risk, one of the ways around it is require people, but again, I wouldn't want this in law, require people to take a test before they go fly, or a test before they go into a restaurant. Again, that's my personal feeling.
But what if the vaccine doesn't help with transmission? And see, this is what's weird about the whole vaccine thing right now. It used to kind of be like an attenuated virus. It would inoculate you. Like the polio one is excellent. There's a couple other ones, but as far as this one, it seems like it's waning if you look at the Israel numbers. And so, don't we have to kind of have the variable as like if it's effective at actually transmission, because the most scared people of this virus are the vaccinated, it seems like right now, and they're scared to be unvaccinated, and then that kind of like that begs the question, like, does your vaccine work if you're scared of the unvaccinated?
Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. Sorry, Jeff, I'll let you talk in a sec. The problem that I have is the understanding of vaccines. Vaccines are not a be-all and end-all. They're not going to protect you all of the time. They are a way of preventing you from getting seriously sick and hospitalized and die. And again, we're still in the early phases, so people understand the need to be cautious until we get more data. So for me anyway, I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket and thinking that the way in which we solve this is just simply the vaccine. The other point of it is because people are refusing to get vaccinated, what it does is it gives the virus a chance to mutate. And when the virus mutates, the vaccine that you have taken is less effective against that new strand of because it's evolving, it's getting stronger, it's getting more resistant to drugs. So that's the misunderstanding, is what is a vaccine actually for? It's not to basically exclude you from getting the virus. It's to, if you do get the virus, you're not hospitalized.
It's designed to eliminate host vectors, is what it is. Yeah. Because the more host vectors you have, the more, like Crafty said, the more opportunities you have for mutation, which is why we have the Delta variant now. Is because there were so many of the big, huge swaths of the population that refused to do this or believed that the vaccine was bad, disinformation across social media. And now we have a variant that even people who are vaccinated, like my wife and myself, the Delta variant is now out there, which we can get and is also can be asymptomatic. So I could have the Delta variant, despite the fact that I'm vaccinated, and I could carry the Delta variant around, give it to other people. And that's the problem. So if everybody had just gotten vaccinated, like with the polio vaccine, but with the administration of the polio vaccine was a hell of a lot different than when they were administering this. So they had actual full-on programs where you went and everybody got hit because and that's why polio is not an issue anymore. My grandmother had polio. I saw the results, the effects of this. It's a good thing that they did it this way. But now everybody's like, no, I don't want it. I don't trust it. Blah, blah, blah. You have people like, celebrities who are not virologists, that are not any kind of specialty, and they're saying, oh, what about rights and blah, blah, blah. And then you have this kind of disinformation. Now we have another variant of COVID that's spreading throughout our population that is doing the exact same thing as the previous one did. But now that means that there needs to be a Delta variant vaccine.
Sorry,
Delta's going to mutate from there, and so on and so forth.
So really quickly though, there were people, epidemiologists, virologists, Geert van den Bosch being one of them, before variants even started coming out, freaking out, saying that if you start to vaccinate people in the middle of a pandemic, and this used to be actually kind of the common knowledge, that will actually breed variants. So there is a certain sect of science, and it's probably not the mainstream and Fauciism kind of stuff going on, but that actually called that there will be variants, and a lot of them if you actually vaccinate. And really, this vaccination, it only helps with the spike protein. And what's interesting is when I'm around people that are vaccinated, and this happened to me twice, I've been sick. So I've already had COVID. Nobody talks about natural immunity and how it's 13 times stronger, according to a new Israeli study. Nobody wants to talk about that. They just want to point the finger and blame, since we have high cases, on the unvaccinated and say, 95% are unvaccinated in the hospital.
That's very short-sighted, because they're not talking about the people who have regular, healthy, typical immune systems, like you, like me, like Crafty. They're talking about the young, they're talking about the elderly, and they're talking about the immunocompromised. The individuals whose immune systems are not as established, people whose immune systems are compromised by pre-existing conditions like diabetes or cancer, or maybe they're sick with something else. Okay, and they don't know it. Underlying conditions that they may not be aware of, but have weakened their immune system to the point that this thing can take hold. So that we're not going to do. There is still concern. We don't want the virus to spread, because the more host vectors, the more chances for mutation. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it's not that we're disregarding the immune system in and of itself. The immune system is an excellent defense mechanism that we have evolved. The problem is that there's some people out there who have weaker immune systems than other people. That's the problem, and we're trying to protect them. It's not about a healthy person getting vaccinated. It's about a healthy person protecting someone who either cannot get vaccinated because their body can't handle it, or that if they get the virus, it will kill them.
Sorry.
You just agreed that there's nuance. There's nuance here.
I'm gonna let Jeff
I have natural immunity.
Tim. I'm gonna let Jeff speak, and then I want to get back onto the actual topic.
Yeah.
This came up, actually. Bill Maher brought this up because he was kind of getting into the anti-vax kind of stuff. The point of getting a vaccine, the reason it's beneficial is because your immune system works the way it does. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and you're wrong when you mention that they're not talking about natural immunity. One of the things that's been going around right now, it's a story I've been following, is the notion of super immunity. People who have had one of these SARS-CoV variants and then got vaccinated. Not only are they incredibly well defended against all of the variants, they're even defended against variants that they tested them against 2 or 3 different variants that haven't even made the leap from an animal reservoir population to human. Like they're fighting it off. They're even able to fight off SARS-CoV-1 strains. Like it's like that. It's worked extremely well. So they're still studying this. So they do acknowledge that that's okay, but it doesn't make any sense to this is not the chicken pox. There's this kind of folksy wisdom out there that if you just let it run its course, it's going to go okay. Everybody's going to get it, and those that survive. It's a kind of weird, like a Kentucky Fried Darwinism kind of thing. That's not how this is going to work. The more people you feed this virus to, the more versions of this virus you're going to get. And this particular virus infects all of your cells. It's not just a respiratory one or a stomach one. It can infect all of the types of cells in your body. We don't know what the long-term results are going to be from people who have had this. We are already seeing things like increased risks of heart attacks from survivors, increased risks of strokes. I have a second cousin who is probably going to lose a lung from this. So she will more than, and the other lung is so scarred, she will probably have emphysema before she's 55.
Yeah,
so
and that's
the vaccines
terrible.
the vaccines will protect from that because they are giving your immune system enough information to work with so it can do its job, because it is strong enough to fight this stuff off, but it needs help, and that's what's going to prevent people from dying.
But you just admitted there's variants that are going to cause breakthrough cases and breakthrough deaths. So
I'm not talking about hang on.
It's like chasing an
it's not.
terrorist.
No, you're always going to have that situation. Like the person that you mentioned. When you start immunizing a population during some kind of pandemic, you're still going to get some inertia from the infections that are happening. What you seem to be saying, if I'm following your logic correctly, this is what I have a problem with. You're going to get breakthrough infections anyway, so why not just let it run its course? If you let it run its course, you are exponentially, by hundreds of times, thousands of times, increasing the chance that you're going to get a variant that you are not going to be able to stop. If you get something that's as contagious as Delta, but as deadly as MERS kills over 30% of its hosts. Now you're talking about something that's going to significantly alter the future of the planet, because there were people that just they weren't sure about getting the jab. That's really what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to curb this because this is way off topic. Yeah, if it helps,
the vaccines are creating the variants.
But you can have those discussions. But I will come back to the original question of are you for or against individual choice? And again, why is choice limited to whether or not you have to wear a mask indoors? All of these people who are about personal freedoms, but not when it comes to inside a woman's body, that's problematic. I'm gonna finish up now in a second because it's 1 a.m. and I need to sleep.
You just remind me of that meme, the my body, my choice when it comes to the vaccine, but then the pro-choice person comes and is like, me too. They're like, no, not you.
I want to play this before I finish, because I did say I did say earlier that I play it, and it basically sums up the attitudes that are problematic. And this is from Russell Howard, and I probably will get copyright claimed. I don't give a fuck. It's a good clip. So this is from the other day he released this. So
but then listen to the way these men describe women.
There's a host body, and that host body has to have a certain amount of rights, because at the end of the day, it is that body that carries this entire other body to term.
She's not a host, she's a woman with a name and a body that is none of your business.
I love that clip. I think that's going to be a regular clip for me.
Yeah, the baby's a parasite, but the mom is a host, right?
But
essentially, you can define it like that if you're talking strictly in biological terms. Because,
symbiotic relationship.
At a certain point, it's not symbiotic. Because symbiotic implies that there's an exchange where the baby does as much for the mother as the mother does for the baby. Yeah. But that's not true. The baby
for the woman's body.
The baby is subsisting solely off of the woman and taking from her nutrients, from everything. If the baby was giving back to the mother, if the baby was giving back to the mother equally, then that would be a symbiotic relationship, like a remora and a great white shark.
Yes.
Okay.
And not everyone sees that as a bad thing, like obviously, or otherwise we wouldn't procreate. But it's the point. The reason why I showed this clip is this is someone who helped write the bill, the Texas bill. This is someone that was for one of the heartbeat bills, calling the mother or the woman, calling a woman a host. It's when the veil slips that they actually view what they think of women. They are hosts. They are nothing more. They are they're human beings without a face, without a name, without thoughts, without feelings, without desires, that need to be controlled and need to be put into practice. And that's the problem.
I can say, I mean, since you probably aren't going to be monetized or whatever for this one, I think that I find it kind of weird that the Republican Party nationally in this country, I mean, I heard what JL said about Greg Abbott and his, his campaign ambitions and all that kind of stuff, but it's really interesting if you stop and think that the Texas state Republicans have pushed this issue, which is energizing their opposition going into midterm elections next year. So they are simultaneously energizing the opposition against them, which normally they don't do in a midterm election year, while simultaneously embracing a public health policy that is actively seeing members of their base die.
Man,
like
if you keep watching the news, man.
If you look at the statistics, the areas that it is overwhelming so far, the areas that went for Trump, the numbers of COVID cases and the numbers of deaths are incredibly skewed. And the Republican Party in the U.S. actually owes Biden a little bit of a thank you, because the fact that he's going to take the political hit in doing a mandate for there are Republicans that are talking amongst themselves that are secretly thankful to Biden for doing this, because you weaponize it against Biden and continue to play the culture warrior, while he is making sure that some of their members of their base, the people that are going to show up to vote for them in 2022 and 2024, stay alive.
You do realize in 2022 and 2024 things will swing back. You do realize that, right? I mean, you're in for a rude awakening.
It depends. Normally, I would agree with you, because that tends to be what 2022 is almost a backlash every time for whatever the incumbent political party is, or the incumbent president's political party. But in this particular case, if they're not, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch to see what how the demographics are going to play out in these areas that are hit by COVID, because we are still nowhere near seeing this thing end. And then seeing the fact that state Republican parties, the influential ones that are really spearheading the culture war stuff between voting restrictions and this kind of the abortion issue, they are actively energizing their opposition. The fundraising efforts on the Democrat side and other left-wing groups is huge. They're going to be both sides are going to be going into 2022 foaming at the mouth mad. And what I find odd is that the math is not going to be on the side of Republicans if they underestimate the number of people that are going to die from COVID-19, because right now, the population that is most at risk are the people most likely to vote for them.
Just real quick, Voodoo Inquisitor for $10 says, since this video likely won't be monetized, let me help. And Tattie,
apologies, Keelah.
It's okay. I like having these conversations. Tattie at Voodoo Inquisitor have some beer. And Rob Parks for $10 says, cause I've got fuck off. No, I'm not singing Garth Brooks. Fuck off. We were having a conversation. Let's just lighten the mood for a second before we.
If I can reply to Jezza the random review, and there says a host. We're not talking about a caterpillar attacked by a parasitic wasp here, and that's true.
Yeah.
There, because the woman is producing it, and it requires the natural process to do that. But when we say parasitic, we're referring to the nature of the relationship.
Yeah, and it's not. It's also not to disparage against anyone who is who is for pregnancy. Sorry, Audrey. Yeah, this is me right now. Is just fucking trying not to giggle. And so the story behind this, I had a member stream the other day, and we were talking, and we were basically saying, because I know how much Tusk absolutely loves ABBA, and we were talking about things that we didn't like. So anyone, go to Tusk's page.
Why does that track? Why does that just track? I know.
Go to Tusk's page, request ABBA. But yeah, so I was saying, growing up, my mom absolutely loved Garth Brooks, and she would rewind the tape back when it was cassette tapes. she would rewind it back, and she was able to hear, like bat hearing, she was able to hear when the song was beginning again. And she would just play that one fucking song over and over and over before we had CDs and you were able to actually,
Come on,
automatically.
You can sing that.
No.
Because I've got friends in low places. You can do it. Come on. Sing with me now. Where the whiskey drowns. Come on.
I've taken my headphones off, by the way.
She's setting them on fire right now.
Because I'm here in Texas. I'll sing with you. I'll sing. Come on, girl.
No. No. Not that song. Anything with that song. Thank you for the €2, Jasper. Coffee and rocking out. Yeah, I need coffee. It's 1:00 in the morning.
Or sleep. I think you probably just need sleep.
Yeah, sleep is overrated. I was working for 12 hours today, so like I'm a rock. I'm good. Tatty says message deleted by Crafty Keelah on behalf of Clive. So I always I always explain to people that my channel is not a democracy. It's my channel. I'll talk about what I want. I'll have the people on that I want, which is why I love having Tim on, because it gets a different perspective and we can have a conversation. And Tim has this thing of just ripping the piss, and this is why I love having Clive.
I am curious. Did we get to why there seems to be this weird, line drawn between, my body, my choice in regards to vaccines, and my body, really, my choice really. I
don't think there is
abortion.
Do you not understand like how ironic it is for you to ask that though? Like on the Republican side, I'm not either. Truthfully, I do not agree with the leftists, the progressives, the liberals, wherever those are going.
No, but is it my body, my choice? Is it my body, my choice, or is it not?
The same thing is going on to the Republicans, because they just say, well, it's my body, my choice for abortions, but it's not for the vaccine. It's the same thing in reverse, dude. Isn't that ironic?
No. But for me, there is no line. There's no line differentiation. It's my body, my choice. So for the woman, that's it.
But for the anti-choices, it's a hard line issue. It's my body, my choice isn't a thing unless it is mask mandates and shit like that.
There's also this the paradigm that you have to address, in that when it comes to pregnancy, you're talking about the woman in and of herself, just her. But when you're talking about vaccines, you're talking about the social structure, the person that the society that individual lives in, and the fact that it's not like there's Now, we're not talking about vaccines for an individual about a childbirth. We're talking about a vaccine to keep a virus from spreading and mutating. So there is a sociological, or I guess a societal impact of one, and just the
my natural immunity
is
the other 14 times better than yours, though. Like my natural immunity.
That's a deflection.
We're not getting into that argument.
How is that not a deflection?
I'm saying how because one is a societal issue and one is an individual issue.
But I'm
because the abortion doesn't. But the abortion that a woman has weighs on her. That is her choice. It does not weigh on the society at large. It has no bearing on the society in and of itself. Whereas the presence of a virus does. But for some reason, you're drawing this line here when it should be there. It's their choice because of the distinction that one is individual and one is societal.
I'm indifferent. First of all, of the abortion thing, I don't know yet, but I haven't really come to the conclusion. But what I'm saying is natural immunity is also taken into effect in the whole societal aspect that you're talking about. But when you mandate a vaccine, that goes out the window, because 100 million people have already had COVID, or around there, CDC says. So a lot of people have natural immunity. To force all those people to be vaccinated is another question. And then you talk about how leaky these vaccines are. They don't stop transmission. They're old. They're for SARS-CoV-1, not for Delta. All this stuff. You guys are heads up in the clouds, man.
If you've got a reservoir of 100 million people that have had COVID-19 already, if they get their vaccines, that's a reservoir of people who, if that super immunity thing is true,
they don't need them.
No, they might be the one. They might be the ones that stomp it out. That might be the linchpin.
I'm ending this conversation, dude. Lads. Tim, stop. No more about vaccines, please. I am going to end it out because I have been going for over 3 fucking hours, and I either need tea or to drop. And I'm going to put this up on the screen. This is the March for Choice. This is, I don't know, they're saying it's the 10th year, but as far as I'm aware, we only started it in 2012. So we'll see. I'm trying to get in touch with them. I was like, what the fuck? So for me, it's the 9th year.
What do vaccines have to do with the Texas bill? We need a Greg Abbott vaccine. That's what we need.
There we go.
Right. So March for Choice is on the 25th. That's actually the day of my sister's birthday. But I am hoping to be live streaming from the March for Choice, and I will show you who shows up. It's going to be awesome. We will have masks on, as far as I'm aware. It will be social distancing, but we will see what happens. There will be demos all around the country, as far as I know, as well, just to break it up a little bit. So March for Choice on Saturday the 25th. So watch this space. I will be going live from 2:00. I will be doing interviews with people. They will have their masks on, so they're anonymous and they're protected and all the rest of it, because I have safety issues when it comes to me and my channel. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for coming on and joining me for that last hour. I'm going to start with Tim. Have you got anything else you would like to say?
Yeah, I actually appreciate the two gentlemen and yourself. Actually, a lot of good points were raised. I'm kind of here learning as far as what I got into the whole COVID thing. We're definitely going to disagree at the end of the day, and really only time will tell. And so, yeah, thank you both. You guys had a lot of good commentary that I don't get in my circles. So I'm actually open to information. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on, because it's not easy to jump into the lion's den. I try to be nice. So I hope you stick around, and I hope we have these conversations going into the future about a range of issues. I'd say we actually agree on more than we realize.
Yep.
When it comes to abortion, I am completely free, safe, legal. But yeah, JL.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to tell people who you are and shout out your channel and say goodbye?
Yes, for those who don't know me, I'm JL. I run my own personal channel, JL Warren, where I have an ongoing series called Bridge the Divide, where I talk about, where I debate woo believers, debate theists, and just basically address rationality and irrational beliefs and the irrational behaviors that typically they lead to. I also have my own personal podcast where I discuss, scary movies and stuff called Week in Horror. All the links are on my channel. You can check those out. I do have an upcoming series that I'm working on that addresses the cult of Christianity and breaks it down why it is a cult and explains that. So lots of good stuff, content coming up and everything. And I hope to see everybody there. By the way, on my scary movie podcast, Week in Horror, we're about to begin season 3. Season 3 premiere is next week on Wednesday. So I hope to see everybody there. Other than that, just continuing the fight against willful ignorance and irrationality.
Thank you. And Jefferson, would you like to tell people who you are in case they don't know who you are and what you're about, and say goodbye?
Yep. Jefferson Spatchcock. Got a channel called Jefferson Spatchcock. You can go there. I usually kind of bust on a loudmouth, obnoxious guy named Darth Dawkins. So if you're into that, some people find my commentary funny. Some people undoubtedly find it annoying. Other than that, get your COVID jab. It's free 5G. It's a no-brainer.
And some of the stuff you say is fun. Definitely check out his streams, because some of the stuff you say is hilarious.
I appreciate that.
And Jay Patrick who's your brother, was on earlier, and I will put all of your links. I have both of your links. Tim, if you have a channel, by all means, let me know. I don't know if you do have a channel, but if you do,
I quit 2 years ago. Yeah, I was a flat earth debunker when it was before it was a cool thing. Me and Reds were the only ones, and then yeah, a lot of other people came in. So yep.
Awesome. Right, I need to shill this fucking thing out. Right, lads. Those of you who have been here before know that I am one of the people who work on the channel Pain of Progress. We released another episode today of the old series. We're gearing up for series 5. And it is run and created by my co-host of Life on the Flip Side, Steaming Cup of Reason. So check out the new thing. It's on the CB radio. Yeah, the CB radio. And other than that, I don't think I have anything else to say. I will be back here on Sunday for sure. And we will do Life on the Flip Side. I will have to go get started whipping Tatty into shape and getting some new emojis for the channel, because now I have more people that are crazy enough to want to support me. So thank you so much for being here. I know this was a long conversation. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for all your super chats and new members and all of that. That's fucking awesome. Until next time, which is Sunday, or if you can't make Sunday, it will be Saturday the 25th, because I'm working all next week. Saturday the 25th, I am going live from the March for Choice. So please do tune in. I don't know how well the fucking signal is going to be or how well my phone is going to hold up, but we'll see. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.